Parliament rules require that in that instance we elect an acting chairperson for the few minutes that the chairperson is not here. And that is to be done in terms of the NA rules. So members, what I will do, I will call for nominations. And once there's a nomination and a second, I will check with the member so nominated if he accepts. And then if that member accepts, then we'll proceed to call for further nominations. If there are further nominations, then we'll proceed to a vote. But if there are no further nominations, then the member so nominated will come take the seat. I would request that members, when they raise their hands, as soon as they are identified, then say their full name and surnames and then make their nomination. Thank you very much. I will then invite for nomination honorable members. I recognize Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Acting Chair. Good morning, Minister and everyone in the House. My name is Honorable Oscar Masakona Matafa. I hereby put the name of Honorable Subrathi for nomination as the Acting Chair whilst the Chair is still on her way. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Honorable Member. Honorable Shongwe.
Mr. Mgoma, thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Honorable Shongwe, Tulani by name. I nominate Ubaba Ustole, or Honorable Ustole. Thank you.
Perhaps, honorable members, before that nomination, I should have checked if there's a seconder for Mr. Subrathi nomination. Can I check, members, if there's a seconder for Mr. Subrathi nomination? Can I check if there's a seconder? I identify Honorable Podlani. Honorable members, I didn't hear from Honorable Podlani, but Honorable Podlani.
Good morning, Babungoma. Honorable Podlani, I second the nomination of Babu Stoll.
Thank you, Honorable Podlani. I saw Mr. Stolle's hand was up. I identify Honorable Stolle.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you for the member that put trust on me. But by now, I'm withdrawing my name, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. Honorable Sitole is not available. Any further nomination, members? Honorable members, without those further nomination, I therefore invite Honorable Subrathi to come forward and chair the meeting. Thank you so much.
Good morning, honorable members. Good morning, honorable minister. Good morning, fellow South Africans and guests. And welcome to our Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. And thank you for the nominations and the faith shown in me to stand in as chair, whilst Honorable Khusela makes her way to this Portfolio Committee. Members, Honorable Khusela flight was delayed. She was on an earlier flight at 6 a.m. Unfortunately, it left only at 7 a.m. So she had planned her travel such that she would have been here at 10 a.m. Unforeseen circumstances, the flight was delayed by an hour, and hence she arrived at 9:27, and she's on her way to the house. So Chair will join us shortly, at which stage I will hand over to her. You're all welcome to this meeting here. May I ask the Secretariat to please flight the agenda for this morning. Before we proceed with the agenda, may I request Honorable the Secretariat, are there any apologies for this morning's meeting?
Thank you, Acting Chair. Yes, we have an apology from Mr. Sauls, a member of the committee. We have an apology from the Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, as well as the DG. They are abroad on business travel. And we also have an apology from the FPB Board Chairperson. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. We also want to record the presence of the legal services, parliamentary legal services are here at the request of the chairperson, I would imagine, and they have informed me that they would not be in a position to provide any legal input into today's discussions because they did not get a briefing of the presentations that will be shared. However, if the Portfolio Committee so requests, they will be able to provide written feedback after the meeting. Is that my understanding correct? Thank you so much. So, members, the agenda is before us. The agenda has been slightly rearranged so that item 4, which is the briefing by the Department of the Draft Policy Direction in terms of equity equivalent investment programs, is moved to the end, and that is really to allow the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee to preside over that item on the agenda when she does arrive. Yes, Honorable Potlani.
Good morning, Acting Chair, and good morning to colleagues. Chair, the first problem we have is that the item that you are now moving last to the agenda was not going to be part of this meeting. We were told by the Secretariat that an application was made for this item to be in the agenda. And we only heard in the media that it was then approved. And we obliged. But for us to then come into the meeting and push the item down is not proper. So I move, Chair, that we carry on with the approved agenda of this meeting, and we do not move any item around, because it would be setting a bad precedence if we are going to do that. We have given you full confidence as this portfolio committee to preside over this meeting.
No, thank you so much, Honorable Potlani, for your input. As we are all aware, I will recognize hands and input in response to Honorable Potlani's. Maybe, is there any input in response to, maybe let me respond to Honorable Potlani and then take hands. Honorable Potlani, as you are aware that the media statement that gave rise to item 4, we all heard about it on Friday or thereabout. And the chairperson of this portfolio committee, Honorable Khusela, then saw it necessary in her wisdom and in the interest of South Africans, because it is a talking point, that she brings this item on this agenda. And as a portfolio committee, it was communicated to us in the group that this item is being brought forward. It was also communicated to us that we will be having a physical meeting as opposed to a virtual meeting. It is therefore my view and my sentiments that since Honorable Khusela Diko was the one, as the chair of this portfolio committee, who deemed it important and necessary that the department comes before this committee and accounts, we afford her that opportunity, and also given the fact that I have advanced reasons that her delay here is not on her own account, it was because of the delay of the airline that she is not here. We afford her that opportunity to be present when item 4 is dealt with. That is my response to Honorable Potlani. If members wish to respond to views I shared, you are most welcome to. This is a democratic parliament. Honorable Matafa, I recognize you.
Thank you very much, Chair. No, Chair, I wanted to support the agenda as you tabled it with amendments. Chair, I have the rules of the National Assembly here in front of me. I do not see any rule that prohibits the agenda being amended, but I see Rule 154, which states that the committee has the power to determine its own procedures, provided that they are consistent with the Constitution. My view, Chair, is that in us determining the rules and procedures of this committee, you have made a proposal, and I myself would second that approach in terms of altering the agenda in response to unforeseen circumstances that would have led to the chair arriving late. And Chair, that point, Rule 154, we must read it with Rule 155, which also speaks about the committee having the power to determine their own working arrangements. And this includes scheduling of the agenda. So, Chair, I don't think that there is any rule prohibiting what we have done. As such, I would second that we move as you suggest. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Honorable Matafa. I'll recognize Honorable Shongwe and thereafter Honorable Makobele.
Thank you,
Honorable Shongwe
Chair.
first.
I then, Chair, want to ask and understand what is the need for us to nominate you as an acting chair now if we have to wait for Uche to start the meeting. Is the meeting about Uche Diko, or can we proceed with the meeting? I support the notion that we should move on with the meeting because we have a chairperson, which is you now. So why change the agenda for that reason? Or is there any other reason, if I may ask? Thank you.
Sorry, as I indicated, the item 4 has been moved to the end because Honorable Khusela had placed the item as the chair of this portfolio committee on the agenda, and hence I see it only fit that she
Point of-
presides over
point
that
of-
matter. Sorry?
What's the word? Point of order, Chair, on you. Chair, you are asking us as a portfolio committee to adopt an agenda. And we are saying you have presented to the portfolio committee a proposed agenda which we adhered to, hence we are here. There is no need for us to change the agenda as it stands. As it is, we are wasting time. We could really adopt the agenda and we will support that. We work on the agenda as is. It stops being the item of the chairperson of the portfolio committee. It is an item of the portfolio committee. Because if it is an item of the chairperson, then we will sit and not say a thing and listen to the chairperson. Unless this is what you are trying to tell us, that it is an item of the chairperson and not of the committee. And because it is an item of the committee, you are empowered to carry on with the agenda as we received it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, Acting Chairperson. My name is now Tambo from the EFF. I do not see a reason why we are opposed to the restructuring of the agenda as a portfolio committee. I really don't. I would have thought it would be collegial, actually, understanding that the chairperson hasn't taken an independent decision to just be late for the meeting. I would be very hurt if I would hear that there was a proposal to amend the agenda, and we mustn't pretend like this is not an issue of national and international concern, that my colleagues rejected an amendment of the agenda because I was delayed by a flight. All items on the agenda are equally important, the minutes, everything we're discussing, but we know very well that we're discussing a matter of international importance. And as colleagues, I do not see why we would not adjust the agenda to accommodate a flight delay that is outside of the hands of the chairperson. It doesn't mean the agenda item belongs to the chairperson, but it's an appreciation of all of our collective vested interests in this agenda item. So even you, chairperson, I think you're allowing the meeting to make it about the chair. It's not about the chair. It's about us reaching consensus as a committee as to appreciating the need for full committee participation. These are not committee members who are saying they have chosen to abscond. They're delayed by a flight. Let's allow the restructuring of the agenda to allow full committee participation, and that includes the chair, even if it wasn't the chair. Let's not stifle that, that opportunity to engage. I would support the restructuring of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Makobela, I recognize you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, it's unfortunate that we sit here bickering about adoption of an agenda and also starting of a meeting, which brings me to question your fitness to hold that office, that chair temporarily. Because as a chairperson, you need to be able to lead. We cannot sit here and debate whether we must move items because one member of the committee who happens to be the presiding officer of this committee is delayed by a flight. All of us took flight last night because we understood the weight of this meeting and the changes that were made to accommodate the weight of this item. So this delay of a flight cannot hold us at ransom to deal with this item decisively as number one item as it is on the agenda, and we want to adopt it as such. We cannot allow you to play these delay tactics, Chairperson, to accommodate other members that are late. They should have taken the flights late with us last night to make sure that we're here on time. We refuse to be disadvantaged by them. If they felt it was important to be here on time, they should have made arrangements last night. And if they're not here, unfortunately, this item is not even more than any other item that we deal with on a weekly basis in this committee. Just because it's got a media attention, billionaires' attention, and any other international attention doesn't mean it's more than supplying rural connectivity by USASA reports that we deal with on EMISA issues that affects our people daily. So we refuse, Chairperson. We need to continue with this agenda as it is. If they are not here, they can catch up online. They can find a way to send their questions if they have any comments or questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Makobela. Honorable Mkhakha, you for first Honorable Megan and then Honorable Mkhakha. Sorry, Honorable Mkhaka, first Honorable Megan Adonis, she had her hands up first.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I don't think this is a waste of time, other than to clarify ourselves about the rules of the House. And the rules were quoted, and I was expecting that a person who's opposed to the restructuring of the agenda would quote from the rules the basis of his objection or her objections. And if none, Chair, then you are empowered to make a ruling. Thanks, Chair.
And thank you, Honorable Mkhaka. Honorable Megan.
Honorable Chair, greetings to honorable members. Chair, I think I would like to just also agree with my honorable members and what has been cited by Honorable Matafa as well. I think we have the full discretion in order for us to proceed. And it's unfortunate that we are saying we do not want to enter into a debate, but we have opened the platform for a debate. The shifting of items on the agenda does not nullify any item, and therefore we have seconded and we have said that we shall proceed with the recommendations as per amendments that proposed by the chairperson. Thank you very much.
Honorable Sitole.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, we mustn't ambush ourselves because we came here with a straight agenda. So if this agenda has been changed, we're supposed to be briefed before we adopt this agenda. So now I think we have to go back to our original agenda, so that what the chairperson is on the way. He will find us on our meeting. So now I think, Honorable Chairperson, the best way, we have to go back to our agenda as we do have, and we have been received, and then after that we can go forward.
Thank you, Honorable Sitole. Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Chair, for another opportunity. Chair, before you make a ruling, I would respectfully caution the committee in terms of them wanting us to be mechanical in how we approach our procedures. This would not be the first time that an agenda has been amended responding to issues and circumstances that would have obtained, and also prioritizing of certain items. Because we have had instances where ministers would either run late or request to leave early, and as a result will then amend the agenda in the beginning of the meeting in order to be responsive to those particular situations. So before you make your ruling, let us be cautioned as a committee that it will set a bad precedent if we're going to be so rigid that we cannot alter an agenda or allow the chair the discretion is empowered by him being in that particular chair, because it will disadvantage us going forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa, Honorable Makobela, and this will be the last stand I take before I take a decision. Honorable Bolani will be the last stand. First Honorable Bolani, then Honorable Makobela, and then the chair will take a decision.
Chair, in the interest of time, I request that we put.
Indeed, Chairperson, let's put it to a vote, because in all the instances where we have changed the agenda, there was consensus. This case, there is no consensus. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. Thank you for the robust discussion, and I think this is a democratic parliament. I had arrived at a decision that I was going to propose to this House, and that decision was to proceed with the agenda before us, largely because as we have been guided in terms of the rules of parliament, there's nothing precluding us from doing what we have done to rearrange the agenda in the light of a matter that is of international and national interest, and to allow the full contingency of this committee to be present, and citing the fact that the chairperson is an integral part of this committee and she constitutes an important part, and also further citing that the chairperson was not negligent in her timing of her flight, it was out of her hand, and also citing the fact that if we are not amicable to the amendment of the agenda, it will not be in the spirit of collegiality of this portfolio committee going forward, and it will set a wrong precedent. Therefore, it is my my view that we should proceed with the agenda, and the first item will be the adoption of the minutes. Honorable Budlani, you wanted to speak? Thank you. Can we proceed with the item on the agenda, please? The chairperson has ruled.
Able Chair.
I recognize you.
When I spoke, Chair, I asked that we put it to a vote.
Okay. Now let's allow democracy to take its faults. I think this is a good, useful. The people are watching the democracy. Honorable Budlani and Honorable Mokobela suggested that we go to a vote. Let us put it to a vote. Those by the show of hands, and I as well as a member of the portfolio, those in show of hands that we proceed with the agenda, amended agenda before us, please raise your hands. Yes, Honorable Budlani.
Could the Secretariat please assist us in terms of ATC, who are the members who would have a vote in this?
Sure.
Because we know there's also alternate members.
Chairperson?
Yes. Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I plead with my comrades from my caucus that we withdraw on supporting the...
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, Honorable Matafa, I wasn't quite hear you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to plead with members of my caucus that we do not allow this meeting to go into a vote. Normally, the committees of parliament pursue a consensus approach. So instead of dividing the House, I would wish to withdraw my caucus and allow the agenda as initially submitted and supported by Honorable Budlani to proceed.
No, thank you so much, Honorable Matafa. I also support then, in the interest of not setting the wrong precedent for this House and delaying future meetings where it goes to votes. What this House has demonstrated, unfortunately, is the lack of collegiality amongst us. And as your chairperson had originally ruled, we proceed. But we will proceed with the original agenda that was circulated, and that will be the first item, will be the item on the minutes. Thank you so much. Can you please flight the minutes? Okay, yes, Secretariat, can you please talk through the minutes?
Sorry, Chair. Wasn't the first item, was that the first item in
The minutes.
the
minutes.
initial agenda? It wasn't, Chair.
It was the second item. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, so the first item was the minister's briefing. My apologies. So can we have an adoption of the mover for the adoption of the agenda, please?
Chairperson, I move.
Thank you so much, Honorable Budlani. Honorable Budlani moves. Who wants to second the adoption? Honorable.
Honorable Shongwe,
Thank you so much, Honorable Shongwe. Approves the
The
adoption.
chair is here. We're
Adoption of the minutes. Long live the chairperson of the portfolio committee.
You are doing great, Honorable
Thank you
Subrati.
so much.
Carry on.
I think this was a wonderful demonstration of the democracy of a democratic parliament of South Africa. Let us welcome the chairperson of the portfolio committee, Honorable Khusela Diko. Thank you so much, Honorable.
Just to thank you, Honorable Subrati. We are disappointed with Toll.
Long live the acting chair. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Subrati. Honorable members, let me apologize once again. I think everything that could have gone wrong went wrong today. Okay, I'm out of breath. But let me thank you for not voting. I think as I was coming through the gate, I heard you discussing voting about the agenda. And I was of the view that that would be the worst thing that would happen to this portfolio committee. We have never had an issue that we were not able to find one another on, and we were not able to at least resolve, if not through consensus, but through agreement. So thank you very much. Let me also greet the Minister, Honorable Malatsi. I see there's leadership of the department. I don't know if the chair of ICASA eventually made it. I left him at the airport with Honorable Ndlela, amongst others. It's a full house. I see esteemed stakeholders, members of the media. You are all welcomed to this meeting. This is an ordinary meeting of the Portfolio Committee. I see the agenda is on the screens, with the first issue being a briefing by the department on the draft policy directions, the adoption of minutes, the briefing by the department on SABC debt to Centec, and then the Film and Publications Board. Was the agenda adopted, Honorable Subrathi? So the agenda has been moved and it's been adopted. Maybe then let's start with the first issue, which is the business of the day. Apologies, I'm still listening to you on YouTube.
Wonderful demonstration of the democracy
Thank you. Let me maybe just introduce the first item on the agenda. We had to make a change to our agenda on Friday last week to include a briefing by the department on the policy directives that have recently been issued by Minister Malatsi. Let me thank the Minister for honoring our invitation. And indeed, it was an invitation. It was not summons. I've heard members of the media, to great consternation by the Minister, saying he was summoned to Parliament. And why I'm making that clarification is because a summons hold particular legal consequence and significance in terms of the rules of Parliament. So the Minister was invited, he was not summoned. I think in terms of background, members will be aware we've been dealing with this issue for quite a while in terms of ICASA and licensing. And on the 21st of May, the Minister issued policy directives on the need to issue new ECNS licenses, which is the Electronic Communications Network Services license. Then on the 23rd of May, the Minister then issued another policy directive on broad-based black economic empowerment. Now, we thought that it was important to invite the Minister to brief the committee on these directives for a number of reasons. One, we need to make sure that the Minister at all times exercises his executive power in a rational manner, in a lawful manner. And then secondly, I'm sure it seemed quite curious to some of us who would have seen those directives. Firstly, the timing of the directives. I don't think I need to explain that as all of this was happening, the President was in the White House, where discussions were expected to ensue relating to issues such as the licensing of Starlink. And secondly, then, given the fact that we do have other satellite operators in this country, and there's never been a need to issue such policy directives, we thought all of that required that perhaps the Minister must take us through his thinking and indeed the rationality and lawfulness of his actions. So without wasting any time, let me hand over to you, Minister. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Excuse me. Thanks very much, Chairperson, and greetings to the members of the Portfolio Committee. Chair, in terms of guidance, because the agenda speaks particularly to the policy directive on the EEIPs, and in your remarks you've made also reference to the ECNS one. So I just want guidance so that we handle everything that is expected of us, and then we proceed smoothly, because I would then ask with the committee that we divide the sections into two if we're covering two topics, to allow each and every subject to be dealt with separately.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think in reference, I put them together with the assumption that they are related. If that is incorrect, I think in your presentation, then you could outline. But it would be better if we get one presentation, deal with it on both matters, if you please, or if you believe that the other one, since it was not put on the agenda, you wish not to deal with it, that is also fine. It may come up in questions. Thank you.
No, thanks. That clarity is important so that we move in tandem in terms of what needs to happen. What we'll then do, Chair and honorable members, is I will focus on the first part, which is the core of the presentation, and then ask the colleagues.
Honorable Subaraya?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I just want to record that we did receive a presentation from the department within the Portfolio Committee. And is there a representative from the department here? I don't see the DG or any of the members from the department. Is the department represented here other than the Minister? Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Minister, do you want to clarify?
Yes, there are representatives from the department led by Acting DDG Ngobeni on my left, and also the team from policy in the department led by both Mr. Alfred Motu and Mr. Alf Wills. So that's why I asked that point, because I'm aware and that there is that presentation that Honorable Subrathi spoke about, so that we all move in the same place. And that's why I said I will then lead the core of the submission on the EIPs. The two colleagues will then come in on the section of the ECNS presentation that's being alluded to. And then we can handle questions in totality in that way if the committee so accepts.
I believe that is in order.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister. You may proceed.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. And I must indicate that I welcome this opportunity to engage with the Committee on the Policy Directives, particularly because obviously, given the fact that the Gazette was last week and it generated a lot of coverage and publicity, the committee saw it fit that we are then invited. And members would recall that in the previous engagements that we have had with the committee, going as back as last year, we've indicated the efforts from the department side around the full recognition of equity equivalent investment programs in the ICT sector. This is reflected also in the medium-term development plan of the 7th administration of the Government of National Unity. So this work predates the events of last week. Last week was the third layer in that process culminating in the Gazette. And I want to also just be clear that it's not about introducing a dispensation for any individual nor any company or introducing preference. The policy direction, members would recall that we started working on it around September. On the 4th of October, as we are required by the process that outlines how policy directions must be handled, we released communication to ICASA in the form of a letter expressing an intention to issue a policy directive to provide policy clarity on the full introduction of equity equivalent investment programs in the ICT sector. That was followed by a public communication released on that specific day. And as required by the process, we submitted the draft policy direction to ICASA to give them an opportunity to be able to engage with it. So the events that then transpired afterwards was ICASA has an opportunity, because we are compliant with the process of the law, to establish its opinion on what it feels should be done in answering the question that we are attempting to answer, which is a reconciliation of the ICT sector codes and the ownership regulations around license ownership. So that process outlines the lawfulness of the intention of the policy directive, because it is prescribed under the Electronic Communications Act, particularly Section 3, which stipulates that the minister may issue to the authority, in this case ICASA, policy directives that are consistent with this act, national policies, and related legislation. And what we are trying to do is then grounded on that very foundation. And as I indicated, that once we had fulfilled the first step, which is to allow ICASA to engage with the policy directive, this circles back to the issue of the reference to ownership being held by persons from historically disadvantaged groupings. The regulations state that this must not be less than 30% or such other conditions or a higher percentage as may be prescribed under Section 43K of the ICASA Act. So that is what we relied on in the instituting of, one, the policy directive and the fundamental question that it seeks to answer. The policy direction refers specifically to the ICT sector codes, which were published under the prescripts of the BBBEE Act, which we know was adopted in 2013. So the intention is to ensure that there is a whole and consistent application of the BBBEE Act and the ICT sector codes. This includes a key element, which is to ensure that transformation takes place in the telecommunications sector, in the broadcasting sector, in the same way that is applicable in other sectors through the enablement of broad-based economic empowerment. And I think it's also important to take a step back to the formulation of the ICT sector codes, which were approved in 2016. And it provided for recognition, amongst other things, ownership element, the management control element, skills development, enterprise and supply development, and other specific contributions that are relevant to the sector. So this mechanism around equity equivalent programs and how they can be utilized and how they should be utilized in the sector is not a new invention. It's not an invention by me. It is an attempt, in my view, to say that in the formulation of any regulations in our sector, it has to be read consistently with the ICT sector codes, which emerge from the broad-based economic empowerment. And we know that this use of equity equivalent programs have been a long-standing regulatory tool that has been in place in the sector. The DTIC approved this in 2016. And I think it's important also at this stage to clarify that while the ECA, which guides policy making in our sector, and the ICASA Act do allow for ICASA to make the regulations, it also allows for ICASA in making those regulations that it must give effect to the whole parts of the ICT sector code. And my duty is to ensure that there is alignment between the codes, between the regulations, in fulfillment of all our national laws, in this case citing the BBBEE Act. And I believe, and I strongly believe that in terms of the process that we have followed from the formulation of the policy directive leading ultimately to the gazetting, we have followed the prescripts of what a ministerial policy direction should follow. We have also fulfilled the key step, which is the engagement with the authority being CASA. And I think this is also important because the consultation with the authority means that its submission must be given due consideration. It does not mean, one, that the regulator can stop a minister from exploring a policy direction, because there are two steps. The first step is the opportunity for the regulator to engage with the draft policy direction. The second step is post the public comment stage, which is where we are in now. We must take into consideration what each and every interested stakeholder or anyone who has views on this policy direction, and to have their views being aligned, to have their views being considered in the formulation of the policy. The other additional point that I want to bring to the attention of the committee is that in 2014, the DCDT amended the ECA, and it explained in the reasons for the amendment at the time, particularly the amendment of Section 9, subsection 2B, that the focus of this act has been changed from the empowerment of, and in brackets, historically disadvantaged groups to broad-based Black economic empowerment. Therefore, the required equity ownership by historically disadvantaged individuals in Section 9, subsection 2B has been retained for the time being, provided that broad-based Black economic empowerment requirements may replace it in due course. And that is an important consideration because on assessment of the ownership regulations, it is my view that the regulations did not wholly take into consideration the reference that is being made, one, in the exploratory memorandum on the purpose of the amendments, and in particular, the reference to such other conditions as it is expressed in Section 9, subsection 2B of the provisions of Section 43K of the ICASA Act. It did not apply broad-based black economic empowerment, which is defined both in the ICASA Act and in the ECA, and its meaning is well articulated too. So, considering all of this, it is my view that to settle this question, the policy direction is the best avenue to answer this, to answer this question. In the end, colleagues, in the end, the ICASA regulations may continue, if the authority so chooses, may continue to require the 30% equity ownership by historically disadvantaged individuals. But what it must do is to also permit the commitments that are envisaged and articulated for in the ICT sector codes around valid conditions for applications for individual licenses. This meaning the equity equivalence program. So where are we now in terms of the process that I've outlined? Post the Gazette, we have a 30-day period in which all stakeholders, and by the volume of the contributions on this subject, it is very clear that there are multiple stakeholders who've got very interesting views on this, that they'll be able to make their submissions through that period. What is incumbent upon the ministry and the department is, in consideration of those inputs from the public, they must inform the final formulation of the policy direction, which will then be shared with the regulator as it is required. And in closing, Chair, I want to underpin this point, which is important and has been diluted in some of the conversation around. I am pretty clear that transformation is sacrosanct in our country, that it's a non-negotiable in order for the country to achieve its aspirations, but most importantly, to live to the provisions of the BBBEE Act as it was articulated and envisaged. So we are not attempting to open a special dispensation for Starlink or any other company or an individual. We are saying that the regulations in our sector must consistently make provision for the two choices that exist in any other sector and other aspects of the ICT when it comes to the role of multinationals, whether small or big, that the provisions around the option of a 30% local ownership or the pathway of equity equivalence must be consistently available, or at least for the authority to consider the consistency of that, of that option. So the ultimate intention is to ensure that the regulation is aligned with national empowerment regulations for licensing and potential new entrants. And lastly, Chair, which I think will then sum up before we get into the conversation, is the sentiment around the role of the regulator vis-a-vis ministerial roles. It is very clear in terms of the process that ICASA can at any given time amend its ownership regulations at its so fits. What we are seeking and raising the flag for is that in doing so, that must be in tandem with the ICT sector codes and that it be applied consistently. And to go back to what you said, Chair, which is a very valid point around timing. Colleagues, different people are always going to have different views about the timing. And I would really like that in that conversation, we are mindful of the steps that predate the visit that took place to Washington, to be mindful that the work that culminated even engaging with ICASA as early as the 4th of October would not have been done that way if all of a sudden there is a realization that we have to gazette by Friday. We did say, even at the time, in many of the public engagements that we had, that the intention in terms of our own timelines would be to aim towards a finalization of the policy direction towards mid-2025. And we are now as close to mid-25 as humanly possible. would not have predicted that the events, there would be a visit last week. But I make that point to showcase that there is no conspiracy on our part with regards to this policy direction. There is no underhanded effort in darkness to railroad this into the South African public. We have at all times communicated of the process publicly, and we are comfortable that the stage that we are in now is a legitimate stage which opens the process for the public and all stakeholders to make submissions on their views, and we will consider those views. We have to consider those views because we can't preempt the final determination of how those public comments will be. And there's been some sentiments, Chair, that why not proceed or pursue the avenue of an amendment to the ECA, which has been the observation of some commentators. There are multiple avenues that are available to consider which instruments would be timeous, which instrument would be effective in addressing the question that we are seeking the regulator to ask. And we felt that on the consideration of all those options, the policy directive is still the effective intervention to do that. In the end, in the final consideration of all the comments that are being made, it may well be that there is a need to explore the amendment of the ECA. And members of the committee would know, having made some comments to this regard, that there are various elements of the ECA which require amendments, and it's been a topic that is ongoing. And those will also even be considered in dealing with the fundamental questions around the holistic amendment of the ECE versus the efforts that are currently going on. What we are looking at is we have to maximize options that can help deal with one of the most pressing fundamental needs in our country, which is around broadband connectivity and expanding it to every corner of this country. And in doing so, that we abide by the transformation policies of this country, and that's the reconciliation that we are seeking. On that note, Chair, I'd like to close this one and then hand over to Mr. Mutu, and I'll fill through the acting DG to deal with the ECNS one, and then we can have the engagement guided by you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Clarify for us before we get into the second presentation. I did say at opening that I assumed there's a relationship between the two. Is there a relationship as you see it, or you just, I don't mean it condescendingly, but you woke up one day and said this one, then 2 days later this one?
No, sir, that formula of just waking up and thumb-sucking things is very self-destructive. I wouldn't do that. So the work towards the second one is a continuation of the efforts from the 6th administration. It had been in the pipelines, and the process of consultation was such that, as I had indicated, before we get to the gazetting again, you give adequate opportunity to the authority to do so. I think in the overall sense, there is a relation, because they speak around licensing conditions, they speak about competition in the space, and they seek to deal with the question around, closing the digital divide. So that's where the commonalities are.
Thank you very much. Acting DG, Mr. Ngobeni, I don't, oh, there you are. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair, honorable members, and everyone here in terms of the stakeholders that representatives from the department's portfolio. I will request Mr. Alf Wills to take us through this presentation, but just to provide some opening remarks with regard to the issue of the application, creating an environment to allow application for individual electronic communications network services licenses, because it is coming from the ECA as the requirement. However, this work that started with the Competition Commission when they conducted a data market services inquiry to establish whether there's competition in the sector and how to address the issues of cost to data services. So this provides a culmination of that work. I'll hand over to Alf Wills to take us through the presentation at this stage. Thank you.
Good morning, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members. My name is Alf Wilts. I'm the Chief Director, Digital Access and Services in the department. Thank you. The Acting DG started speaking to this particular slide. It just really says that there was work done by the competition authorities in the data services market inquiry, and they confirmed the lack of effective competition. The report concluded that it's the lack of competition in the market that appears to be of the greatest impediment to lower prices for consumers. Next slide. The report also pronounced on inadequate universal access to electronic communication services in the country. The DSMI report recommended that interventions ought not only be focused on driving down data costs, but also on ways to promote universal access. Next slide. So these policy objectives are always at the back of our minds. Then there's an interesting provision in the ECA, and the history of this section is managed liberalization. So managed liberalization is a framework, an international framework really, where initially countries had large incumbent operators or so-called monopoly providers that controlled the fixed line networks, and if anyone else wanted to provide a service, they would provide through that fixed line network. Then managed liberalization suggests a gradual opening up of a market, so that as in South Africa, first you had Telkom, and later you had the second national operator. You had the Vodacom and MTN, and later the third mobile Cell C that was licensed. So all of that is a gradual opening, because it's a process of protecting consumers, also considering lack of resources, scarce resources such as spectrum. So what Section 5.6 then says is that the authority, ICASA, may only accept and consider applications for new individual ECNS or electronic communications network services licenses. So those are the big licenses to provide infrastructure. ICASA may only license those once the minister issues a policy direction permitting to do so. So this was relevant at the time, and each time, for example, when the second national operator was licensed, the minister first had to issue such policy direction. Similarly, the third mobile, of recent years, there were issues of USOLs and the wireless network that was suggested. But Section 5.6 was included in the Act, as I said, in the context of liberalization, but has since been overtaken by market developments. On the one hand, about 490 IECNS licenses already exist, but on the other hand, it is not possible to apply for new individual IECNS licenses, since this policy direction is required by the minister. So then the question is, but why do we have 490 licenses? Now, that has a history of its own. So in previous years, around 2006 towards 2008, there was a court case, and it was really a court case between what was formerly known as value-added network service providers, or VANs. And VANs at that time said no, but they have a right to self-provide and build networks. And through what is called the LTEC judgment, eventually the courts pronounced on the matter, and in the transition from the All Telecoms Act to the new ECA, then granted these rights to those former VANs licensees. So today, as we speak, we have 490 IECNS licensees that have the right to provide networks in South Africa, and individual licenses are large networks of national and provincial scope. And then when it comes to smaller licensees, the 2,228 class network licensees. Next slide. Industry stakeholders requested that a policy direction be issued to the authority under this section to enable the authority to invite applications for new IECNS licenses. Again, this has a long history. Over the years, I remember ICASA has, on a number of occasions, requested the department to issue such policy direction so that new and more licenses can be issued. I remember recently, last year, ISPA requested this. There was an ICASA stakeholder consultation in February where this was requested again. And the DSMI report observed a lack of competition in the market, but we found that hindrances to effective competition per that report did not include an insufficient number of IECNS licenses. So, since a high number of IECNS licenses have already been granted, and those licenses may be transferred subject to the authority's approval, the authority should determine whether new IECNS licenses will promote the objects of the Act, including, without limitation, improved competition and universal provision of electronic communications networks and services. So, Chair, we started off by saying, let's just direct ICASA and give them a right to issue these further IECNS licenses. But then the question arose, but if you already have around 500 such licenses, will this lead to an improvement in competition? And there's a question mark around that. We couldn't really, because our work must be evidence-based, we couldn't really find evidence for that. And similar to other policy objectives, therefore it was necessary to take a step back first and say, but let's consider this further, and ICASA is perhaps the most appropriate body with its mandate on competition and licensing to do such an investigation before acting and spending the resources. So what this document then does is, and we've been consulting with ICASA on the matter. In fact, I just looked at a letter dated 4 October last year, which was the first time ICASA responded to our proposal on such a policy direction. But so what it does is it proposes to the authority that they do an inquiry first on this matter. And what would the inquiry consider? The demand and need to invite such further licenses, whether such further licenses will promote the objects of the Act, and then specifically our objects of promoting competition, whether or not new and further licenses will contribute to universal service and access, and then whether the benefits of such new licenses will outweigh the costs, including the cost to the authority of doing the monitoring and enforcing compliance with such licenses, and therefore also the burden on the environment. So this inquiry usually takes place under Section 4B of the ICASA Act, and after ICASA performs such an inquiry, then it's required that a report be given to the Minister, which is then what this says. Within 6 months, the authority should make such recommendations to the Minister. Next slide. Ultimately, it's then when the Minister receives such recommendations, one would imagine it would clearly motivate for additional IECNS licenses and what the benefits of such further licensing would be, or it could be that no, there is no further need for additional licenses. It wouldn't necessarily promote competition or any other objects. We have sufficient number of licenses in the market, and therefore no further action is required. The downfall of that is, and that's why we refer to a trading of licenses happened. So, as I said, on the one hand, you have the 490 licenses. On the other hand, if I'm new today and I want to apply for a new IECNS license, I'm not able to do that because I have to wait for the Minister's policy direction. In the absence of that, for me to enter the market, the only way is I must go and negotiate with one of the existing 500 licensees and I must try to procure such license. And that's the trade we're talking about. So out there, people pay a lot of money to then buy such licenses in the market, and then ICASA's role is then to consider a license transfer. So that's them. They just deal with license transfers, publish it for comment, see what the implications are, and do license transfer. So that's the dilemma we have, and these recommendations from ICASA will then give us evidence of what would be best from a policy and ultimately in the interest of society. Chair, and yes, we've managed to publish it last week. It is one of our APP targets of the department, and publishing it was part of the Q1 performance required, and that's why it was important to get it in the public domain. And currently it's therefore open for 30 calendar days, 30 working days. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Woods. Let me just check, is that it from yourselves, Minister?
Yes, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. I don't want to cast aspersions on the process because you yourself have also said that there is obviously a lot of public interest in this. But on this issue of the relationship between the two policy directives, I do want to just push you so that we all move from the same understanding. Am I correct to make the assumption that the license process, so for any new provider to be able to operate in the space, the license process needs to be closed? Needs to be opened. And the only way it can be opened is by you issuing a policy directive that it must be closed, and the policy directive of the 21st of May is the start of that process. That if the public comments come back and say, yes, you must open, then you can open and you can get new players in the sector. And then secondly, where then now the licenses are open, people can apply, then the policy directive of the 23rd of May then says, even for new licenses, then you may need to you may do away with the 30%. Is that a correct understanding? Would they flow like that in the event the comments came back and said, yes, open licenses, yes, remove the 30% and align with BEE like you were saying? Thanks.
Chair, I think it would be difficult to start preempting what the probable permutations would be, because for any convenience one may take any line that may suit their peer view. But what Alf is advocating is that the dilemma right now is that if a new entrant, and Alf, please clarify this with regard to individual licenses, right? Right, with regards to the individual licenses, that is where the problem is right now, because in circulation already, you've got 490 licenses that are in the space. And the study and the report that was done by the Competition Commission, amongst other things, the cost to communicate, was looking at, is there sufficient competition in the space? And the dilemma that we're having is that for any prospective new entrant for an individual license, the only way they can enter the space is to enter into, a negotiation with a current license holder for a transfer of that license, rather than an entirely new process of their own to get a license. And the Policy Directive then seeks to open that up so that it is done. And that's why we don't have a firm view as to whether the opening of that would ensure or achieve the objectives of that study by the Competition Commission around market competition leading to, affordable cost to communicate.
Thank you. Mr. Oates, do you have any additions?
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So that really shows that there is an indirect correlation, but at the same time, if ICASA, for example, through their inquiry, find that we don't need such further licenses, then that would be the end of it, in all likelihood. So if there was a direct correlation and one needs the other, we would have rather just told ICASA, open up, you must now issue and allow further licenses. We haven't done that. We've stepped back and we allowed the authority to do an inquiry on it. So if for example, they do come back and they do say they still recommend, then yes, then such policy direction will eventually be issued, I guess, depending again now on the public consultation. But then, I mean, for us it'll take a month and a half. Then ICASA would have another 6 months at least. So that takes quite a long time. And if eventually ICASA, we issue the final policy direction on the matter, that'll probably take another period of time. So that could add a year to this process, which typically also shows that the correlation is more indirect than direct. In fact, today, if you're a new company and you wanted to enter the market quickly, you'll probably be better off just going and procuring a license. Your time to market would be much quicker than waiting for a possibility that this opening takes place on the other side in due course. But we want to emphasize, yes, coincidentally now there is this indirect correlation, but our process has started long ago, and we can probably retrieve ICASA correspondence of many years ago where they've pleaded that we do this opening because it causes unnecessary administration on their side, merely doing license transfers, which simply doesn't make sense. And the fact is, managed liberalization is history. It's been overtaken by events, and we needed to act on it at some point or later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Woods and the Minister. Honourable members, I was still about to speak. I was going to say, I have received obviously a lot of correspondence from a number of political parties. I know Honorable Makhubela would receive correspondence from parties not represented in this portfolio committee, I think including Build One South Africa and from the public. So I do want to open an opportunity for engagement on this. But Minister, also that correspondence we will be passing to you where you may not have received some of it. Because I think it's important just so that you also get an appreciation of the issues. So I'm going to take hands. Let me start with Honorable Matafa, Honorable Subrathi, Honorable Tambo, Honorable Chawuke, Honorable Shongo, Honorable Makhubela, Honorable Bodlani, and Honorable Sithole. In that order, please.
Thank you, Chair. Let me take this opportunity to appreciate the opening remarks by the Minister and the presentation that is made. Chair, sitting here as lawmakers, we are brought by voters who elect the parties that we represent based on hopes that our manifesto commitments present to them. Now, looking at the policy directives as presented by the Minister and the Department for Public Participation, I think that they sort of dilute or undermine those particular hopes. Because I can just pose a simple question. Why not open the licensing applications without including equity equivalent? Because, Chair, I'm raising this on the basis that the World Bank declares South Africa as the most unequal society in the whole world. The GNU Statement of Intent agrees with that. And one of the key focus areas is to ensure social justice and equity. So I'm a bit worried that a minister from a GNU party with that kind of a commitment in the statement of intent will bring, in my view, and in the view of the party that I represent, a policy directive that undermines that particular statement of the GNU. Chair, it is not only the World Bank. Let's come to the sector. In the report by ICASA State of ICT Sector Report of 2025, that report calls for a deeper transformation, particularly in ownership and management controlled by black people. So I'm interested to find out from the minister, if before he kickstarted the process, did he solicit a view from ICASA that are this directive legislatively and constitutionally sound? Because it is not only the report by ICASA, the constitution of the country also calls for equality and redress. And the BBBEE Act sought to achieve that particular equality and redress. Chair, it's also the BEE Commission itself that laments the lack of transformation of the ICT sector. The sector features in the top 5 of the less transformed sectors in the country, amongst agriculture, property, and financial services. Would we be correct to say that this policy directive is not correct to be proposed under the current circumstances, that the transformation agenda of the GNU that we represent and the African National Congress Party that I represent in this committee? Chair, I want to test something very quickly. I missed the name of the gentleman behind the acting DG. He cites the Altec court judgment. I'm just interested to find out, where does equity equivalent come in? Because our understanding of the judgment, it focused mainly on ICASA's role in the correct applications of Section 32, 92, and 93, in terms of allowing the license holders then to convert their licenses. Nowhere does it cite a directive by the minister to be issued. Therefore, in our view, Chair, this appears to us as a policy matter. It appears as just the minister giving ICASA authority to say, open up licenses, but don't tamper with the transformation agenda that this country has agreed to in terms of taking it forward. I'm sorry, Chair, I'm just going quickly through my notes. Now, I'm sort of concerned, Chair, with the minister's remark that when he states that ICASA as a regulator cannot stop the minister from proceeding with policy directive. That is a loaded statement. In my view, even if ICASA is not comfortable with what the minister is trying to achieve, it means that he will simply ignore their recommendation. And that is concerning, because one of the mandate of ICASA is to assist this government and this country to achieve constitutional values, and amongst them is the equality as well as social justice that I have mentioned, as were created by the unjust laws of the past. Chair, I will pause there, but safely to state that we request all parties and members who are of society who are interested in this matter to reject this particular policy directive. It goes against the values of what this society or what this government seeks to achieve. And I and the party that I sit in, I don't think we will support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Honorable Subrathi.
Thank you, Chairperson. And Chairperson, let me start by saying that this matter has indeed gained a great amount of attention of South Africans and I think internationally. Largely because, Chairperson, this concerns the wealth of the land of South Africans. The Freedom Charter says very clearly that the people shall own the wealth of this land. An alternative equivalent to ownership speaks exactly against that principle. As Honorable Matafa has mentioned in our statement of intent, to which the Honourable Minister and his party are signatories to, that one of the goal is to promote social justice and equity in our land. And I think that is the cutting edge, that is the sore point, and we must not be naive to lose that point. As in my short stint as acting chair, I was challenged, the democracy of this country was challenged, and I stood by it. I will not be naive in this house to say that we cannot talk about this. So as a caucus of the ANC caucus in this portfolio committee, we were asked, and I whipped the ANC study group. I was asked for a public statement. I did not. We waited until yesterday, until the leadership of the African National Congress had met, and I got a briefing. I wanted to know very clearly, was any deal cut in America by the leadership? And I've got a clear-cut clarity from the African National Congress that there was no deal cut clearing the path for any Starlink regulations, as the public is calling it. So very, very clear, the African National Congress is clear. Our laws are sacrosanct. There is no backdoor to gaining entry. Anyone wanting to gain entry into this country, especially into the ICT sector, which is a sector that is most disadvantaged, as Honorable Matafa said, perhaps the most, must come to the front door. There is a 30% that is in place. So I would really, I'd like to ask the Honorable Minister, because we must not be naive to avoid the politics. The party that he represents, that is the Democratic Alliance, have they had any conversations with Elon Musk and Starlink, that whilst the minister has gone on pains to indicate that this is not coincidental, I think South Africans need a very clear answer. Kati, that has your party posturing this now manje to solicit and to create the avenue for Starlink to come in? Certainly the African National Congress position remains, as Honorable Matav has indicated. We will not support this policy directive. We will call for its withdrawal. Chairperson, having clearly identified our party position and requesting the Honorable Minister to make known his party positioning, and that there's been no back chat rooms taking place in America last week, I'd really like to ask, the EEIP that the minister is proposing, what is the history of the EEIPs that have been in place thus far? And how have they benefited the people of our country tangibly, especially in terms of transformative agenda? Chairperson, another area that I wish to raise with the Honorable Chairperson is that he is considering that Section 9(2)(b) of the ECA clearly mandates a 30% HDG ownership for licensing. What is the legal justification for your policy, Mr. Minister, for your policy directive that aims to bypass this requirement, that equity equivalent programs which fall under a separate legislative framework? Are you not essentially trying to reshape the laws through unilateral action, thereby diminishing the authority of Parliament? Following on to that, what rationale underlies your decision to exempt the ICT sector specifically, whilst other industries such as mining and finance have consistently complied and continue to comply with the 30% HDG ownership requirement? Lastly, Chairperson, as the African National Congress, we continuously emphasize that ownership is a crucial pillar of economic transformation in our country. And how does allowing an organization such as Starlink, and I will bring Starlink and place it at the center of this house, to bypass equity participation align with the national policies aimed at promoting significant black ownership in the economy, particularly, Chairperson, in a critical sector such as telecommunications that has historically marginalized, disadvantaged South Africans? Chairperson, as I pause, may I also express my concern, as I've expressed previously, that the Honorable Minister has consistently surprised South Africans and this committee, such as the withdrawal of the SABC bill. We heard of it in media. such as the intended CETA regulations. Again, we hear of it in the media. Chairperson, I wish to record my concern that we would really like to be taken into confidence by the minister so that this portfolio committee and the minister can work collaboratively to benefit our countries rather than using the media as a means through which this portfolio committee is communicated to. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Subrathi. Honorable Tambo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and to the Minister and to the Department for the presentation and for the spirited contributions from Honorable Subrathi and other members of the committee. My concern is that it seems like the Minister is trying to amend legislation using a ministerial policy directive. And I'll tell you why. Because you use the word alignment, and I think you do it deliberately instead of amendment. So I think you're trying to effect amendments using a ministerial policy directive to the Electronic Communications Act as well as to the ICT Sector Code, which is a product of the BBBEE Act. Because in your policy directive communication, you say that you seek to align the two. I'm interested as to what would the consequence of that alignment look like? How do you achieve alignment outside of changing legislation? Because the ICT Sector Code, as much as it might be a regulatory instrument under the Department of Communications, it's a product of the BBBEE Act. And to give a ministerial directive on the ICT Sector Code, which belongs to that specific act, which is regulated by the Department of Trade and Industry, confuses me. On the Electronic Communications Act, which speaks to the 30% ownership as well, I would imagine that an amendment of that or an alignment of that with the ICT Sector Code would require some level of amendment to either both pieces of legislation or one. One doesn't belong to the Department of Communications. It's a product of an act of the Department of Trade and Industry. The other is an act of Parliament. When you want to achieve this alignment, how do you seek to achieve it using a ministerial policy directive? And I think that speaks to the overstepping of powers or overstepping of executive powers that has been spoken to in the House. That is my primary legislative concern. But also conversely, I mean, we're talking about Starlink here. I don't think we should tiptoe around it. We're talking about Starlink. There might be many other foreign satellite companies that have interest in operating in South Africa, but there's a specific interest in Starlink, and I think Siklo will speak to the political context about that as well. But I'm interested in, has there any been consideration of the impact the introduction of foreign satellite companies operating in South Africa would have on the local telecommunications industry, specifically as it relates to jobs? Because there's a myth going around here that the introduction of Starlink will achieve two things, that it will achieve rural access to internet connectivity and as well will increase jobs. How will a satellite that will operate and be ran remotely from another country impact on the local telecommunications sector's jobs? And considering especially the high unemployment rate in this country. But secondly, what is the knowledge of the department on the costs related to the introduction of foreign satellite operators? Will it necessarily bring higher connectivity levels to rural communities? Will it be cheaper? Comparative to what? And has there been any consideration of the other spheres within which Starlink operates and the regulatory frameworks in the other countries that they operate and whether they abided by them as set in stone? Because we are aware that they are operating in India with much stricter ownership, regulatory existence in terms of local ownership there. We know there's been a challenge in Taiwan, in Japan. Why are we altering our legislation for Starlink, whereas where it goes to operate in other countries, it did not utilize this coercion for us to change our laws in order for it to operate in South Africa? So I'm interested in the legislative aspect of it, and I think we'll talk further after we get clarity on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tambo. I think it was Honorable Chawuke after.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. If you don't mind, I will remain seated. Greetings to honorable members and also to the Minister and his delegation. Chairperson, I think I've been greatly covered by my fellow colleagues, but one would also want to find out, in terms of the position of the Honorable Minister in his policy directive or recommendation for gazetting, one would want to understand whether it has been taken into consideration not only through his political party, but as a minister, as an official in cabinet, the consequences that this will have on the ordinary South Africans, ultimately looking at whether it will provide an opportunity for SMMEs who are in the sector to have an opportunity to become service providers in the space. And additionally, it would be what type of consultation has taken place also with the Department of Innovation and Science. We do know that Innovation and Science has a particular program and project that they are running as well. And one would want to see if this was a unilateral decision that was taken, or was there consultation and consultation that is befitting and sufficient to really put a case study forward? Chairperson, also just taking into consideration, and I think this was said by Honorable Sobrathi, in terms of how the minister has conducted himself with the policies and perhaps how he seeks to amend transformative policies, one is quite concerned in terms of whether we are progressing or regressing. And perhaps through your guidance and your leadership, Chairperson, you will guide us in terms of the proximity or the reach of the minister and this portfolio committee in terms of those amendments and perhaps the recommendation. And I think it's quite important for us to re-emphasize that as a portfolio committee and as part of our oversight and our responsibility, we are finding out decisions that are made by the minister on social media and through media platforms. And one would want to have an appreciation that the minister is regularly invited to this platform and to this portfolio committee to take us into confidence on developments of the department. And I think this was said by Honorable Matafa, if I'm correct, to the question to say, or was it yourself, Chairperson, to say, did he sit and then make a decision? Or is this a political party directive and political line of march that is currently being displayed? And we must understand that, as indicated by my colleagues as well, we must take a very clear stance that we're not going to derail from a transformative agenda where we seek to improve the lives of the most vulnerable and create economic opportunities. And I think what is clearly displayed here is leaving an opportunity for international players to come through the back door without consequences, and therefore removing or creating a greater vacuum from those who are in the local market from actually competing. And I think this is what these recommendations that are brought forward by, and I'm going to call them recommendations by the minister, seek to achieve, and more especially favor business rather than look at the interest of South Africans and those who are previously disadvantaged from opportunities. And how do we ensure that these economic opportunities are really deeply rooted in providing or being distributed with the previously disadvantaged in our communities? The last part, Chairperson, I think one wants to find, or second to last would be, in terms of the travel that has been done or that has taken place through the department, what are some of the findings that the minister can give as part of the case studies for us to really understand what type of not conversations but discussions are taking place through your international travels? Because this starts to raise some great concerns, and especially around Starlink, to say, are we having our GNU partners, GNU leaders and other political parties perhaps in the background utilizing their proximity to advance their own political agenda and create alliances internationally? And it must be cautioned, and I think perhaps it must be clearly stated. And then the last part, Chairperson, in terms of the department, it's not consequence, but its ability to measure the risk, its risk analysis. What are the risk analyses that have been conducted in terms of what has been pronounced by the minister? And does the department have the financial capacity to even take this legally? Chairperson, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chawuke. I didn't see Honorable Alicia's hand, so I don't want to leave you. Zonke yeah. Honorable Alicia? Oh, you're saying no? Okay, okay. Kumda Makileyo that she wants to come after Honorable Makubel. It was Honorable Makubel and Honorable Shong.
Yes, thank you so much, Chairperson. Appreciate this time. Thank you, Minister, for gracing us, and our greetings to all the officials and interested parties, my colleagues here. Minister, you are at pains to explain the inexplainable in our view. The clandestine unilateral approach that you took in providing this policy directive is for us very bizarre and very abnormal. This is supposed to be a transparent process according to Section 9 of our Constitution. The public should be aware of it, there should be engagement, and the institutions, at least that you preside over, should be aware of this process. Now, Minister, when you do a policy directive, you're supposed to do a detailed consultative stakeholder engagement. We have not seen that. We've mentioned that even in our letter to you. We're supposed to see your regulatory impact assessment that you would have conducted that would lead you to do this policy directive. We have not seen that. Now you are in a hurry to bring these multinational players, such that, Minister, you are even tripping all over yourself with your colleagues there to tell us about 490 license holders. These are historically disadvantaged groups that have ECNS and ECS license. You raise other questions besides those that we came with. Now you talk about competition, you want to create competition. You've got 490 historically disadvantaged license holders that all of them are sitting at home. You have given them licenses without support, without financial backing, without any technical backing. And now you are even saying to multinationals, you don't need to partner with these 490 historically disadvantaged groups. We are going to find a way to avoid you giving them 30% of BBBEE Act imperatives in terms of equity, ownership, management and control of the ICT sector. You are issuing this policy directive in the guise of creating competition. You are issuing this policy directive in a guise of trying to enable some sort of digital inclusion. You have it sitting right in front of you. The fact that there was a moratorium by ICASA under your department, Minister, to say we're not going to issue any further licenses, but we're going to support the current license holders, ensure that they partner with multinationals that come into the country, ensure that they can breathe, they get capital, they get supported. Have you consulted these 490 license holders in this policy directive? Have you heard from them? What are their limitations in terms of providing connectivity as their licenses are demanding them to? Now, it sounded as if you actually cared for these historically disadvantaged groups that are sitting with licenses that have become useless. But you issued these licenses, then you left them to the sharks, you threw them to the sharks. We only have two dominant players in the telecoms industry in this nation, MTN and Vodacom. And these poor license holders must now contend to be some last mile connector somewhere if by luck they manage to get any project that comes their way. You have not told us any of the support that you're offering to these license holders. I think your reason of competition is really flimsy, it's frivolous. It should not even have been raised in this platform. What you should be doing is to ensure that these 490 are empowered enough to be able to create competition for the two dominant, so that we get our data costs low and we're able to give coverage to the underserviced rural and remote areas. Now, Minister, that was in response to what you spoke about. The digital communications and the Communications and Digital Technologies Department has been mandated to enable South Africa's digital transformation. To date, we can tell you that you have achieved no digital inclusion. You have not created any economic growth for the country or enabled the government to create any further employment or economic growth. You have not achieved universal access or any objectives that are spelled out in the ICT white paper. We ask ourselves sitting here, then what is the point of this department? With billions of rands that have already been funneled into your entities, we anticipated an ICT revolution in your operations. If not for the disastrous Oval meeting in the White House, which descended into a televised spectacle in which South Africa was subjected to a global ridicule as a barbarian, violent nation, pressured into abandoning its sovereign laws to appease the billionaires and multinationals like Starlink, with an investment pitch that turned into a violent crime scene of us slitting each other's throats, raping our women over and over again. If not for that scenery, where your department, Minister, became a center stage, that you have failed to provide technology that will cover our borders, that will monitor crime on our streets and in our homes and rural areas. You failed to provide connectivity that will give our children online schooling. You failed to provide connectivity in police stations such that we're able to remotely report cases and the police are able to respond to cases immediately. If not for the failures of the telecommunications department, perhaps that spectacle of the White House would not even have happened. Minister, we had even forgotten about you and your department, if not for that meeting. Let alone why we are even doing this digital inclusion and migration in the first place. But let's begin here. Blessed memory, Minister Mutsipe Katsiburi was a visionary who announced in 2007 digital migration. And she started all sorts of ICT revolutionary stuff for this nation. White papers that will give us digital inclusion. And the cabinet approved that. And the first digital signal was switched on in November 2007. Minister, it has been downhill from there. And unfortunately, you have joined the gang of the downhill. Because of the inability of this government, we have failed to meet every single deadline for digital inclusion, digital migration, to ensure that a rural child in South Africa can connect to the internet, can learn online, and can access research on internet. I can go to town to list all the failed deadlines from 2011, 2013, 2015, going to your research, 2021. The latest deadline that you had set yourself, you were sitting there, was 31 March 2025, which came and went. No digital migration. Let's talk about ASA Connect. Since 2015, you are going to connect 4,000 schools We're sitting here with less than 599 schools that have been connected. It's a disgrace. Your predecessors that I'm going to name, that have all come and gone, sitting there. The former Minister Nyanda, 2009, 2011, former Minister Padeyachi, former Minister Pule, former Minister Karim, former Minister Kwele, former Minister Mutambi, former Minister Dlodlo, former Minister Kubai Ngubani, former Minister Stella Ndabeni, Nomvula Mkonyani, Ntshabeni, Ngungubele, and now here you are, 2024, and hopefully to 2025, because we can't afford another disaster like this. This department has been a disastrous waste of money. We actually get migraines thinking about the billions that have been spent to connect schools, to connect our rural areas over the past 20 years, with all of these ministers that I have counted. Over 10 billion rand spent. USAF has billions of rands to connect rural schools, to connect rural areas, to connect hospitals. Our questions now remain, who is actually benefiting from this disaster? Who is now going to benefit from this current disaster that you have created for us through this illegal and unlawful Regulation 17.8? Let's bring it now to SITA, where there's a new fraternity now with SITA. This is the entity that the White House was talking about. SITA was supposed to have provided ICT technology to the government in its entirety. Since 1999, when it was formed, SITA has managed to achieve nothing. Claims of corruption leveled against it, leadership instability, governance failures, and the list goes on. To an extent where you yourself, Minister, you've called on the Public Service Commission to launch a comprehensive investigation into this agency. That today, you are sitting here using, maliciously so, its regulations illegally so, to try and advance an agenda that goes against our constitutional transformative agenda of this nation, even our national development plan itself. Now, when we watch that ill-prepared, not yet, Minister, we've been waiting, sorry, Minister, waiting. We've been waiting for this. I will not be long, but I need an opportunity to express this. It's of national interest. We waited for everybody who was late to arrive here, so may we kindly have this opportunity to express. It's our one opportunity. Our constituencies are listening to what we are saying.
Thanks, Honorable
Those ill-prepared GNU delegation that was at the White House describing the failures. Minister, they were describing the failures of SITA. They were describing your failures as a Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. They were describing the failures of Centec, the failures of USASA, the failures of broadband infraco, USAF, and all that money that has been spent. Over 6,000 employees under your watch, employed to provide what you want Starlink to come and do for you. Frankly, we think that meeting, that whole fiasco, Minister, was a vote of no confidence on you. Your party leader sitting there, John Steenhuisen, the president, and all the other ministers and their billionaire friends have actually issued a vote of no confidence on you. And hence they are begging Starlink to come and do your job, and the 6,000 people that this government is paying on a monthly basis to do this very work. And what is your response to all of this, Minister? Hardly 48 hours after the fact, you truly are affirming what they are saying, that you are out of your depth, and without due process and lack of judgment call, You went and issued an unlawful, unconstitutional gazette. So here we are today. An SMK party, through this committee, we're here to provide oversight. Over the past 30 years, oversight was just reduced to ineffectiveness, pushing partisan agendas. That time is over. We are not going to sit and overlook illegal acts, incompetence, and corruption. We understand what this means, what BBBEE means, what the Constitution means when they talk about transformation, what the ICASA Act means, what the CETA Section 23 means. We understand all of this. It means a job opportunity for a township and rural child somewhere. Minister, the gravity of that gazette that you so casually signed, it's a denial of a constitutional right of a historically disadvantaged group to own the economy, to participate in the ICT sector, and to own land in this country. Those of us who have single citizenship and single passport, and many others who vote for us, they want an opportunity to play in the ICT sector. They are tired of equity equivalent handouts. They are tired of multinationals that are going to come in here and give them crumbs and train them without meaningful, sustainable ownership, control, and transformation. Our letter as MK Party was very clear. There is no multinational that will evade the BBBEE Act of ownership, control, and management, the 30% as provided by the Act. As I draw to close now, Minister, it's a pity that we can't directly put a motion of no confidence on you as MPs and as a party, because you have delegated authority, you are appointed by the President. But in the light of that, these are my 4 questions to you. Why should we keep you as a Minister of DCDT? When are you reversing this unlawful gazette? Who pressured you to do this? You are under oath. Who pressured you? Who instructed you to do this? Because you seem like an intelligent man. Maybe in the words of Rupert, you seem like a changed man. Who is pressuring you to do this? Tell us who in your department, the departments that you oversee, advised you to do this gazette, because we want to know them. Because those are the incompetent people that after we release you, we need to go after them as well. Finally, again, Mr. Minister, when can we expect your resignation letter? I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Makubela. Honorable members, I want to plead with you. It's 11:49. Ne?
Chair. My apologies to interrupt you. I missed the second question on the 4 concluding questions that the honorable member asked. So I would really, and I'm not being distracting.
Number one was,
why should we keep you? So I missed the second one.
Honorable Makubela. Honorable Makubela, could you repeat your second question?
You see now, I'm not sure if I can do it with the same passion. So, but the second one was, when are you reversing the unlawful gazette? You got the other ones? Perfect, thank you.
Members, please, it's 10 to 12. And unfortunately, we do have plenary at 2 o'clock. I know that we all want to speak on this matter, but I'm appealing. Let's try and manage time because the minister will still have to respond, and I know you will still want to follow up. SABC Centec are sitting here, so please, can I ask that we manage ourselves? I don't want to stop anybody, lest I be called a changed woman. Honorable Shongwe?
Thank you, Chair. Ngibingelele futhi. Chair, I'm covered kakhulu by our members wethu la ekhaya. But Chair, as we laugh la phakathi, enhlizweni yami kubuhlungu kakhulu. This is a week eseremindwe ukuthi South Africa ithengisiwe. And okubuhlungu sikhunjuzwa ke manje ukuthi ke na futhi siyaboniswa ke manje ukuthi iSouth Africa izodayiswa sibhekile singezukusho lutho futhi. Che ngibuza ukuthi uminister nje behleli lapha insizwa yakithi uthini ngesibongo sakhe, uthini ngomndeni wakhe, uyacabangela ukuthi kusasa this will go in the history ukuthi ungomunye wabadayisi and udayisa ngesilungu, udayisa in a very urban way other than before ngaleya nkathi abantu besadayisa ubefaka itayere eshiswa. Che kubuhlungu ukuthi sibukele iSouth Africa ihleli no Trump edelela umongameli wezwe who is supposed to be representing us but ehluleke. Che, I'm sorry, I'm not going to sugarcoat this one, and I plead with you, Che, ukuthi ngathi ungasinika isikhathi, because this is not about the policy or this gazette kuphela. This in total is ukuthathwa kwezwe, because this Starlink issue has a lot in it. It has cyber security enkulu kabi la ekuthenini uthathe izwe lethu futhi lichicilelwe phansi. Isimilo Che kuminister yasibuza ukuthi uvuma kanjani ukuthi kuxoxwe phambi kwakhe ukuthi akususwe i30% efike kanzima Che. Yabona kuze Che kufike ku30%, it was when abantu abamnyama in business bengakhona ukufinyelela bathola amathuba. They will be told that their companies are not well experienced, they don't have those services, they don't qualify for certain grades. Kwaphuma isinqumo under President Zuma clear in the constitution ukuthi these laws are made to develop umuntu omnyama nokuthi skill sisale la South Africa baphinde bawuthola umsebenzi as business people. Sifika kanjani ukuthi insizwa yakithi emnyama ihlale nabanye ivuma ukuthi cha umuntu omnyama akanganikwa lento, akungena ikhampani yangaphandle ingavunyelwa ivumelwe ukuthi ingalandeli imigomo yeGNU yelokhunja yase South Africa but ilandele yeGNU. Che, in the midst of my question Honorable Colin Makubela comes the act engiyiboniswa Honorable uSoplana ezothi ubuza a question ukuthi i-leader yabo i-leader yabo Chair in the Oval Office, are there deals cut behind the scene? And we are sitting here Chair, we are calling ourselves, or you are calling yourselves into a GNU. Where is the GNU lapho? Because we're supposed to be collectively deciding this thing not as GNU. You are one in this thing. Chair, it cannot be umkhonto wesizwe usaphila ukuthi abantu abamnyama bazodayiswa izwe labo sibhekile. Kunendoda lapha Chair eyagwazwa, if I may check on my phone, I just forgot the name, Emmanuel Sithole. Wagwazwa ngesikhathi seZenephoba attacks Chair. Kulwela ukuthi sithama foreigners athatha imisebenzi yabantu eSouth Africa. Yet makufika umlungu othi skrephani lama BBBEE rules asimbone as a foreigner. Sithi asike hlale phansi the whole minister uyagazetha. Che isikhathi sokuthi bafika ama company asikhandele ama boreholes aspendele amaklasi siphelile manje as skills development. Ngiyafuna nje ukuthi siyibhekisise lento ukuthi alingadayiswa izwe lethu sibhekile. And minister lobu angazi mina ngizobiza straight ubugebengu lento yenzayo ukuthi uzogazetha lento engeke emthethweni. ukuthi kuze kusuke nje kunela belungu. I'm going to ask a question as straightforward kuwe Mr. Minister. Ngiyambona uminister uhlele emva kwakho ngoba wena ngiyabonda wena uminister nangu minister la emva kwakho. Cela ungibuzele ke ungitranslateele. Indlela engithukuthekele ngayo isilungu asiphumi siyala. Cela ungibuzele kuminister emva kwakho. Ukuthi njebe kuthumile uyazi ukuthi iBBEE lo 30% wakhandelwane. You see Chair, umkhonto wesizwe says we must change this Roman Dutch law. This is one of the reasons we want to change this constitution. Because it opens loopholes amaningi, Chair. For one, lapha ku-9, it says there's an or there. That opens this door to this thing. Ukuthi bangene bavulele Starlink la. You go to Land Expropriation Act, Chair. It says nil compensation, where it should be saying zero compensation. That's the reason why we must change this constitution, because this constitution, it designed kahle benza lobugebengu lapha phakathi ukuthi uma kufika isikhathi esiso icloze liso masilifaka solifaka lisivulele umnyango la. So Chair, we may sugarcoat this thing and think ukuthi sikhuluma ngegazette. No, sikhuluma ngeStarlink ekumele singeniswe sizoganga la eSouth Africa esingafuna ukuhlonipha imithetho yaSouth Africa. Uyangixaka mina uminister ukuthi ufika kanjani ekuthatheni decision ukuthi akudelele iSouth Africa phambi kwakhe. Uthini ngomndeni wakhe? Uthini ngesibongo sakhe? Sikhula Chair kwakuthiwe emaphoyiseni mozosebenza bakubuza ukuthi uzokwazi ukubopha uma wakho mayegangile. Uzokwazi ngizubheke former minister ubheke icele ethi ubuziwe ukuthi yazini uma ngingambopha uZuma sobopha nini. I feel this is the same situation where uminister utsheliwe ukuthi uma ungakwenzi lokho uzolamba umndeni wakho. Minister, are you saving South Africans or are you saving umndeni wakho? If you are saving South Africans, do you feel ukuthi lento is right for South Africa? Ukuthi scrap kungadevelop abantu abamnyama 30% usuke khona lapho. Ayo kahle insizwa yakhe awubuye nganene. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shongwe. I think it was Honorable Bodlani. I see another latecomer putting up their hand. Honorable Bodlani? It was... Let me come back to Honorable Mkhaga, Honorable Bodlani, Honorable Sithole, and then I will take the brainwaves. Honorable Thank you, Honorable Bodlani.
Chair, I'm trying to gather my thoughts so that I can really speak in an organized manner. But I think with everything said and done, it's not possible. The first thing that I want to say is that it is true that if an accident happens and all of us witness it, we are all going to have different stories of what happened. Someone will say it was a red car, another one say it was mauve, the other one said it was maroon. And it will not matter what the facts are. I think Minister in his opening remarks covered a lot of the questions that I even myself had. And unfortunately, we came here with closed, and let me not put it that way, we came here with some intentions and we are not going to move. I think whatever the minister does, there is never going to be a correct answer. But before I get into the chairperson, perhaps on a housekeeping matter, like you say, it's 12 now. And Chair, 1 o'clock we have to leave because we have to be in the house. We really have to manage our meetings better. And I know you are not going to be one-to-one to gag members, but we really have to manage. As things stand, you've got the SABC who has come in here and another entity, and ICASA. They are all here on taxpayers' money to address this house, and I don't think they will get that opportunity. So that's that. Chair, I think the point that I wanted to make, and it's a comment, it's not a question. My understanding, and the minister can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding of this is that the minister has gazetted the policy directive so that interested parties can comment on this. How I am understanding the minister is saying, I am not married to this. I am seeing a gap and I am making a directive to ICASA to say, go test the market, to say the stakeholders in this sector would they be open to something like this? The minister has not come here to impose this on South Africans. It is really regrettable that even some of us in this room have framed it that way in the media. As responsible public representatives, we really could have done better. And for me, for my part, from what the minister has said, he has filled a lot of gaps. And for you, for your part, Chairperson, for bringing this issue into the portfolio committee today, I really commend you, because we've seen where things happen outside and we are not party as the portfolio committee. So for that part, I give you. But Chair, what Minister is saying is that there is going to be 30 days from the day of the Gazette for any interested party to make comments. And all of us in this room are choosing to ignore that little fact, because we want to use this as this process for political expediency. Minister has gracefully sat there while he is being insulted, his person and his name being questioned, his integrity, his values being questioned, brought into question, his own family, and he has graciously sat there. And Chair, I was hoping that this meeting would not generate to that, because I think we are one of those portfolio committees that really work in a collegial manner. So this is really regrettable. And my advice to Minister, do not let it generate to a personal attack. Do yourself a favor and do not answer the attacks that have been done on your person. Chair, what we are hearing is that the process, as far as October 2024, was initiated by the department. When the minister came in, it's almost a year now that the minister has been there. Clearly, when he came in October, he had been there for a few months, when the department that he then inherits, the good, the bad, and the ugly he has inherited, started having a conversation about changing, about giving a policy directive. Are we saying, and Honorable Makubele has listed all the ministers, and what they have achieved is quite questionable. Are we saying we want a minister that will sit on his hands, or a minister that will try to transform the sector? Because all he is saying is, let us test the waters. And Chair, if this was happening in October, and I've been saying even in the media, for me it is a real coincidence that this happens on the back of the visit to the White House. In fact, Chairperson, to yourself and members of your political committee, perhaps there is an issue of network in this venue, but the President of the African National Congress, Cyril Ramaphosa, is on record in the media saying this morning about the directive that the minister has given. Things that are desirable need to be supported by many people. So maybe ANC members must refresh their phones so that they understand where the leader of their political party is on this. As I see in the media, the president is saying there was no conversation about all of this in the White House. As we all know, the minister was not at the White House. South Africa. So perhaps it is just an advice to members of the ANC to say, refresh your phones and get a different story from your leadership. Chairperson, what gives me comfort is that the minister is clear about wanting to test this. He is saying, while we have had transformative laws in South Africa, they have not produced the desired results where there is broad access to internet. What we are seeing at the moment in South Africa is, in the world globally, is developments in the sector. And I have said it before to say South Africa has failed to move with the times. We have had no will to really catch up with the world. On everything, we are on the back foot because we hide behind the term transformation. And the minute we hide behind the term transformation, we want to also bring in the issue of BEE. And we refuse to talk about what BEE has done to the men, for the men on the street. What the directive is saying, there should be equity equivalent. And the directive is saying, let us test the possibility of saying, if not a BEE 30% ownership by the company, an equity equivalent of 30%. There is nothing foreign about what we have heard. But if we are to agree with what the minister is saying we must test, then it leaves no room for our political expediency. Then it leaves no room for us to be able to grandstand. So, Chairperson, I do not have questions per se, but I thought I would speak to those things, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bodlana. Honorable Sithole.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you to the Minister and the Office of the Minister and the Department for their presentation. Actually, it helped us to understand the stand of the Minister and the Department. But what worried me, Honorable Chairperson, is that as a portfolio committee, we never been informed. We just hear this on media on Friday, which was actually a disgrace, because we're supposed to know as a portfolio committee. I don't know the processes and the procedure that's supposed to be followed by the minister when it's come to cabinet. Did they inform the cabinet? What is their position when they inform them? And Honorable Chairperson, ngicabanga ukuthi mina ANC akayilumi indwalo, akayinwa indwalo. Futhi ayiqhutha amazenze. Why ngisho kanje? There was that meeting in White House. The following week, there was an announcement from the minister. The minister was not in White House, but the leader of the day was in White House. We don't know what happened behind us. Nobody knows. So that's why I say, Honorable Chairperson, the issue of triple BEE, that 30%, Honorable Chairperson, I think that one is the must. It's not obligations. It's a must for the country to have it. Honorable Chairperson, the ICASA, on the 5 to 7 February 2025, they received 50 submissions from interested members with the focus of a proposed new licensing framework regarding satellite services. The question is, where are they now? When it comes to this now, what does the ICASA say? We have our own entities, which is SACTEC and ICASA and Brownbread, who is supposed to drive the process of this directive. So now I'm trying to check the working relationship between the minister and his entities, especially ICASA. Because the minister, when he briefed us, he says they did submit to ICASA, but I never received any response from ICASA, what the ICASA have said. What Centec have said about what is happening, because when we was doing our own oversight, there's a lot of things that happen in Centec. So now which need to be taken into consideration. And ICASA have got their regulations to be implemented. So I'm trying to check, Honorable Chairperson, because you see, if we are talking about equity equivalent, investment, and programs, where are our people there? Where are our vulnerable people? Especially, I'm from rural areas. I know suffering that they are facing. So now I'm trying to check, Honorable Chairperson, where are they when this draft was crafted? But Honorable Chairperson, I think your advisor, Honorable Minister, are not good. And not good in such a way that from when you was withdrawing the SAPC Act, SAPC Bureau Act, you never informed the committee. So we don't know what is behind the scene. And then now you didn't actually inform us as a portfolio committee. So now I'm trying to check, Honorable Chairperson, your advisors. So now, Honorable Chairperson, I cannot say a lot, but as an Inkatha Freedom Party, we have our caucus on Thursday. I am going to table the proposed from Minister, and then the outcome will be from the caucus. I cannot say I'm not going to support, as the NCF says. I'm not going to say anything as DA trying to protect the minister, but I'm saying we mustn't protect the minister. We must protect the country and the people of South Africa. Thank you very much.
Siyabonga Job. Uthi inkathi bingekho ene Washington. Inkathi bingekho Washington. Honorable Lishe, followed by Honorable Mkhacha, and then Honorable Ndlela, you'll be the last. Thank you. It's 12:10.
2 minutes, Chair. Good morning, Chairperson and colleagues. Good morning, Minister. Minister, does it not bother you that this will lead to endless legal battles? Because I can assure you that as the EFF, we are going to challenge this unconstitutional proposal, not only in Parliament, but we'll make sure that we explore all legal mechanisms, because we are not about to accept a situation where our laws are rewritten in Washington. I'm wondering, Minister, if it really does not bother you that you are setting a wrong precedence of bending backwards when you are being bullied, because we can't, like we've said with my colleagues, that this is about Starlink, this is about Washington. So now we have a bunch of bullies bullying you, and you are bending backwards for them. And then you make it seem like this has been in process. I don't think this has been in process, because I think if that was the case, this committee would be aware that this has been in process. But like my colleagues have been saying, that this is an issue we heard about in the media. I'm wondering if maybe it doesn't bother you that you're making us look weak, that when racists are throwing toys, right, and are hating on black people in our country, and you are giving them what they want. Because this started when the government of this country signed an act, the Land Expropriation Act, into a bill, and they started spreading these lies and disinformation about us. So clearly these are people who hate the laws of this country. Why would a billionaire have a problem of 30% black ownership? This is a billionaire who is not belonging in this country and doesn't want people of this country to own anything. Does it not bother you that you are taking people who hate black people and you want them to operate in this country and they're not even contributing anything? There are not going to be jobs that are created here. They don't want ownership of black people. They don't want black people to own land. They don't want black people to own anything. These are the people who see the majority of the people in this country as nothing. And it doesn't bother you that these are the people you want to operate in this country for free. There are many things that we can prioritize, Minister. There is an issue that could be of priority, which is the full digital migration, which is supposed to assist and boost the digital access. And those are the issues that you're not looking at. There are issues that we can prioritize instead of favoring foreign countries, talking to ICASA to have a conversation and force big telecoms like Vodacom and MTN to ensure that they improve connectivity and they lower data. But those are the things that we are not doing. You are making us look incompetent. You are making us look like we don't know what we are doing because you are favoring racists. These are people who are racists. We can't allow them in this country. As the EFF, we reject anything that has got to do with Starlink. We're saying we know what should be done. We should prioritize what should be done, and then we must just do that what needs to be done, and not allow our laws to be rewritten in Washington. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Alicia. Honorable Mkhaga.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. It's not my intention to rehash what my colleagues have said in this meeting. But I think it's important as the African National Congress to emphasize some points that I think are very important to this discourse. To Gazette is not just a minor issue. It presupposes that a proper research and a feasibility study was done by the department. And my expectation was that that report would be shared with the portfolio committee so that we understand the context and the content of what we are presenting to us today. And perhaps Minister must share with us that report. Because we are a portfolio committee that represents the most disadvantaged society, the black majority in this country, the overall society that is struggling to make ends meet on a daily basis. So the question of feasibility study for me was supposed to be a starting point. 2, the evaluation and the assessment of the sector itself, so that we are able to identify loopholes, shortcomings, weaknesses, so that as you are making a presentation, we are able to be convincing on the basis of facts that indeed this is exactly what led me to take this decision as far as the smart bonded. The third issue is in relation to your interaction with the ICASA as a regulator. My expectation was that, and perhaps you are going to respond to it, the feedback given by ICASA to you, and how have you handled that feedback, given the responsibilities and roles that you have, both of you, ICASA vis-a-vis the ministry. What has been the feedback on this matter? Are you, Minister, and you can read the mind, because we're politicians here, internationalists for that matter. We can read between lines. And I think these members are beginning to share the posture they are adopting on the matter. Are you really aligning or amending the act? But the honesty from your side would assist you and us so that the question of amendment, Parliament has got a due process that you must follow, certain protocols that you must follow. Are you really amending the act under the pretext that you are aligning? What exactly are you attempting to do? What advice have you got from the officials? And I'm raising this, Chair, because, Honorable Chair, because supposedly the minister has got legal advice from the legal gurus, whether a regulation can amend an act. Whether a regulation can amend an act, because an act is law. And if then you would have got this advice, surely something to be clarified as far as that is concerned. It's a matter for us when we're trying to delve deeper on this question of the presentation. It's a department, this act affects a variety of departments. So we don't have a monopoly over this act. It affects other departments. And what has been the process of interacting with other departments that led you alone to reach this particular point? The equity equivalence. Are you opening a window here? Are you in a business of opening a window for Starlink? Are you attempting to open a window for Starlink? And I'm not going to talk about coincidence and whatever. I'm going to be objective as far as this matter is concerned. Because us, we're taking into account, we're not dealing with this matter of satellites, a mega satellites, and the evolution of satellites in the country. We know of Vodacom, MDN, etc., that have installed satellites. You know that there are foreign satellites here, your Yukon, your Kwong satellites are part of this dispensation currently in the country. And some are privately owned, some are individually owned, and some are state-led satellites. Have you weighed which one is more relevant as far as that is concerned? Starlink, surely, is an individual kind of a partnership with Trump, etc., etc. They are trying to fool us as a country to believe that Elon Musk it's an imperative, it's an agenda to fully control the digital space of this country. Hence, we are very sensitive on the matter because the sovereign security risks are very important when we are dealing with this matter, particularly on a service provider that has pronounced itself. It has pronounced itself because it started by demonizing the entire country, all of us here, demonizing all of us here. And therefore the question of loyalty as you enter into partnership becomes critical politically as you are dealing with these matters. Have you taken into account such factors?
As you conclude, Honorable Mkhafa.
As I'm conclude, Chair, the chemistry of mega satellites is a very important matter. Maybe it's a matter a committee must find time and engage and on it so that we're not taken for the ride for certain external forces that are beginning to erode the country. I thought maybe it would be better if you are saying you're considering increasing the stakes for our people as far as this is concerned. But the issue for me is your responsibility as a minister, the responsibility of ICASA. Are you able to balance as two bodies, to balance your interest as you are advising government? Because the expectation is that we're supposed to be advising the government. If you are developing an act, you are amending an act, surely there are certain protocols that you have not yet followed. And therefore, this question of Gazette, for me, remains questionable. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ndlela, you will be the last. Please manage time.
No problem. Minister,
Okay.
it has been brought to our attention that Starlink is actually operating in South Africa. And that being the case, it's operating illegally in this country. And I'll tell you why. There's an organization, a company called ICASA Sepush. I don't know if you're aware of a company called ICASA Sepush. That company, the landing page states the following: we are dedicated to bringing reliable internet to Africa with sparkling, and we know stars sparkle, technology and commitment to service. We're here to connect you wherever you are in South Africa. Stay connected, stay empowered, and unlock endless opportunity. It is now operating in Mozambique, and it is selling equipment, satellite equipment, for Starlink connectivity. Now, our understanding, and by the way, this company is based in Centurion now. They have actually an office and a physical address. Now, what is also concerning, Minister, if you go to their website, there's a part there that speaks to working strategies to keep Starlink connected in South Africa. It says, despite Starlink not being officially licensed in South Africa, many users remain successfully connected through a combination of proven workarounds and reliable subscription plans. And it then goes on to say, based on our testing and feedback from the community and the strategies below, please find currently the most effective ways to keep your Starlink kit online and functioning without interruption. Now, Minister, this is happening right under your nose. We are busy talking grounds for Starlink. Even discussed in the first place. The other point, Minister, that I want to raise is that, this reminds me, especially if you look at the comments that were made by the owner of Starlink, where he said he will switch off Starlink, this was for Ukraine, and it will end all the fronts of communication for the army. Now, if we give that kind of a person powers to connect our people, that alone is a huge risk for this country, because the sovereignty and the security of this country and the defense thereof will be in the hands of one person who can at a whim decide to switch off this country's communications. And as you know, if you go to war, maybe you don't know, there are three things you focus on. You switch off the water, you switch off electricity, and importantly, you switch off communication. Now, you want to give that kind of a person that's operating illegally in the country that kind of power? The other point is then takes me back to Radio RSG, which I see our members from the SABC are. Radio Sandergrense. 1937 it was founded. And that was exactly that, a radio without borders. And was used by the apartheid government, by the way, to communicate. By the way, that radio station is the only radio station in the country where you can actually connect anywhere without any interruption of frequency. What I'm seeing here is this Starlink supposedly for farmers being another radio sondergrenze of apartheid model which can be used and to achieve certain agendas. As you know, we have issues of racism and the issues of farmers that have been raised in this country. What I'm seeing here is another radio sondergrenze of apartheid regime, which is going to be used for whatever purposes that they want to use it for, which we know will not be in the favor of this country. So, Minister, what are you going to do about that? How can...
Thank you. Honorable Vilakazi ngiyacela tu. I will give you, I don't want to shut down anybody, but please help us. I have to make an intervention before you and Honorable Mkhacha speak, so please help us.
I know that, Chair, and thank you for the indulgence. I did have my hand up, and you missed me in the one round. I'm largely covered by my colleague, Chair, and I wasn't sure whether I was shocked or amused or just bemused by the conduct of my fellow colleagues here today. Just the fervor with which the attacks were piled upon the minister. I thought I was going to see froth coming out of the mouths or smoke coming out of their ears. And it was interesting to me, firstly, to note what my colleague pointed out to Honorable Bodlani what the colleagues in the committee are saying and what the president is saying at the exact same time, that are in juxtaposition with one another. In fact, I thought it's maybe a great example, Chair, of the separation of party and state. Which the party is saying one thing, on the other side, the state is saying something different, although it could also just indicate dysfunction in this case. The other point that I wanted to make, Chair, is there's an elephant in the room here. In spite of all these comments that are being made, there's an elephant in the room that is being conveniently ignored or forgotten about. Professor William Kumete from WITS was on Newsroom Africa, I think it was yesterday, if not the day before, talking about the impact, and he's not the only one, by the way, he's just one of many, talking about the so-called, the alleged impact of broad-based black economic empowerment. According to him, over R1 trillion has been poured into those to benefit no more than 100 individuals. His words, not mine. It is well known that these things that are being so passionately protected benefit only a select few, and according to him, linked to a political party that we shall not mention, although we know who, or trade unions linked to that political party. So for me, when I see the fervor with which this is being protected, it makes me wonder whether it's really about the people of South Africa or about protecting certain interests and those people who have the wherewithal and the lines within to benefit at the expense of the entire country. On the other hand, Chair, we have examples of EEIPs in the country, and I'll talk about the ones in the sector only, not broadly, that have actually achieved amazing success. If you look at the IBM EEIP, instituted, I think, since 2015, which has IBM poured more than 700 million rand into that. It has to date impacted many people who have gone on to take postgraduate study in the ICTs as well as enterprise development. Lots more people than BEE. Microsoft, in their own EEIP, have poured money into skills development as well as enterprise development. And in my understanding, and I'll put the question to the minister, I guess, because in my understanding, the minister is not saying, let us do away with 30% ownership. He is saying, let us introduce this other way, which will also not only enable other role players to take part within the sector in the country, but will also result in this transformation that we all so desire. In my view, Chair, and empowering over 150,000 people, as has happened with some of these training initiatives, qualifies for transformation far more than benefiting a couple of hundred people through these multi-billion rand ownership schemes. Ngiyabonga, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, honorable members, for all of your inputs. I'm going to have to plead with you, unfortunately, on two things. One is the amount of time. Honorable Bodlani did say we're supposed to have a hard stop at 1. I'm hoping those members who are attending physically at the dome will just be walking across. I don't know if lunch has been prepared, because I know that people normally want to have lunch before. But I'm going to request that we give the minister sufficient time to respond. So we will give him as long as it takes, because you also took as long as you took. And then on the second issue, I think Honorable Bodlani is correct. Members, we've really tried to give you an opportunity to express yourself, but we keep running into problems. So with your permission, I think from the next meetings that we're going to have, we will have to give you a time limit when you speak. I hope that it won't be taken as me trying to gag anybody. And then, Minister, I really hope you were not feeling attacked personally. I did not intervene because I thought that members were passionate about the issues that they were raising, and I hope you don't take personal offense to that. I just have a few questions, but I think a lot of the issues the members have adequately covered what I want to say. And I'm really resisting the temptation to respond to members, but I'm a member, even if I'm sitting here, so I can engage. And the first thing I want to say is that I agree with the President 100%. I didn't have an opportunity to refresh my phone sitting here because I need to, focus on the meeting. But if the President says anything that is progressive must be supported, it is desirable. I agree with that. I also agree with the fact that in this country we need to go and encourage foreign direct investment. We need to embrace technology. We need to embrace innovation. All of that is agreed. And as the Minister goes out for comments, and I think as we make our comments and ask our questions as members, at no point should the Minister ever believe that there's a drive to block progress. I mean, this is the same committee that meets on a quarterly basis to ask you how far are you with the National Satellite for Communication Program, because we embrace technology. But my questions, Minister, is this, and I'm still fixated on the issue that Honorable Tambo asked you, and then Honorable Mkhacha followed up. You said your intention was to align the BBBEE Act, so you're not doing away with BE. And I think at some point we're going to have a conversation in this committee about BE. But anyway, I digress. You want to align the BBBEE Act or the ECA with the BBBEE. What is alignment? Let's start there. And then secondly, what powers were you exercising when you decided that you want to align? And I think most importantly then, what legislation confers upon you the powers to do that? Because if we speak about the doctrine of separation of powers, where there are contradictions or need for interpretation of law, you go to court. Where you feel that one law doesn't speak to the other one must be amended, you come to Parliament. So I'm very, very interested then to understand what powers you were exercising and where you believe that you would derive those powers from. I mean, there's a number of sections that you've quoted when you were speaking. Similarly, we can do the same. Now, right there on the point where you says the Minister may issue directives, it's very explicit that only as permitted in this act. So okay, I think we can have a long conversation. I don't want to go into that. Let me just fire, because I said everybody must manage their time. Minister, what mischief did you think you were trying to also resolve in the sector? Because I asked you, okay, were you having pressure from Washington because of the timing and what? Because when you issue a proposal, and I want to be clear that it's a proposal of a policy directive, it obviously means that there's an intent, you've thought about this thing, you're supposed to act lawfully and rationally. So, what is it that made you think that, yeah, this is the thing to do? I must ask South Africans if we should do away with 30%. Because you've said it wasn't pressure. As far as I know, there's no Starlink that has applied here in this country. So what gave you the impression there's a problem? And the reason I ask that question is that there are already companies operating in this country with low Earth orbit satellite capability. Amazon is operating here in conjunction with Vodacom, in partnership with Vodacom. I think they call it Project Caper. Link Global is operating here in partnership with MTN. Liquid Telecoms uses Utelcel. All of them have LEO capability. None of them have complained. They're international companies. They can do exactly what Starlight does, whatever you know, LEO. So what was the problem? You know? And then last two questions, which I'll also do very, very quickly. In your media statement, you said, once you have received the comments, you will direct ICASA. You will direct ICASA. Those were the direct words that you use. ICASA is a Chapter 9 institution, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa. The section that you refer to in the ICASA Act in terms of the regulations doesn't say the minister must direct ICASA. It says ICASA can make regulations. So what, maybe if you can just comment on that one. Minister, we have heard from the industry, and I'm sure on these directives they will comment. But they have said they want regulatory parity. They're governed by the ECA. Now you remove 30%. Have you thought about the implication of that to the many shareholders who, not all of them, by the way, I don't know the shareholders, but I would assume not all of them are supposedly, these. Have you thought about the fact that those companies will divest their black shareholders? They don't need them anymore because when you said equity equivalence. Why are you taking away from black people the one thing that can make a structural shift in the economy in terms of ownership? You are not bringing anything new with the EEIP. Firstly, because as you said yourself, it's not new. But secondly, because in the industry, that is what also gives black people an opportunity. All the other things that you talk about, skills development, enterprise and supply, they have to do it anyway, in addition to the 30%, because they have to align with the codes. Issues of infrastructure. In this industry, we demand it of them. Universal service obligations, spectrum conditions. So the one thing that we have, in addition to everything that they have to do by law, you then decide, no, let's ask South Africans if we can take it away. Minister, I'm sorry for taking long, but over to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, and to the honorable members for those questions. And I think before we actually even deal with the specific questions, I think from us, the politicians, the temperature of robustness can go off the roof. That is fine. I'm big enough to take that. But I think what is important is to be gentle towards the officials. In that doing, and I felt at one stage there were unfair attacks on the integrity of the officials of the department, and that, Chair, I think is not correct. Secondly, there are specific themes around the questions that are emerging. One of those is about the nature of the relation between, myself and the committee. And Chair, I must say, I find it surprising that there's this constant reference to the portfolio being caught by surprise engagements, because in several of the appearances that one has had here in this committee, even this matter has come and been the source of discussions. So there could be no legitimacy to a claim whatsoever that even this process was done in a clandestine manner, particularly because we are at the crucial stage that involves and invites public submission to that. So, and it's not a matter of English, but it's a matter of factual representation, because we are doing this in an open process, and from each and every step, from the beginning of the interaction with ICASA, we have done that and communicated on that. And perhaps to kickstart the responses with both the question that you ask and Honorable Tambo asked about whether there's an element of creativity around the use of alignment and amendment and the perceived mischief. We're trying to address in here a gap. There is a gap in the fact that the regulations, the ownership regulations in particular, as they are framed, speak to one aspect of empowerment, which is only around equity of ownership. And I think it was another honorable member which made the key point around that section 43K, which speaks around the or such other conditions. In fact, it was Honorable Shongwe, although he used it in a different context, to claim incorrectly so that it is opening the gap for some nefarious forces to enter into play. It is not. I think the committee, of course, individual members are entitled to say they do not prefer this option that the minister is exercising through the policy directive, but it is made for within the instruments of the very same law that we are trying to answer this question. And Chair, I take the point you made that there is no deviation from broad-based black economic empowerment. There is no departure from that. At the very basic root of this question is that while there is the application of 2 points of entry with regards to doing business in South Africa for multinationals, one being the 30% ownership element and the path of the equity equivalent programs, when you go and look into the regulations, it closes that gap because it looks at one avenue. And we say the opening up that we are referring to is that consider those options to be consistently available for any prospective potential investor that then wants to get into the market. There is a process that unfolds beyond that, which is the actual process of an individual application. And every applicant would then have to satisfy the regulator in this regard about the specific nature of how they seek to abide by the licensing conditions that exist after being given permission to do business here in South Africa. And there was I think I'll go to Honorable Stolle in terms of this also notion that you are acting in isolation and you are acting alone. And that is why, at the very beginning, I'll reference the fact that the MTDP, which is the framework of this administration for the 5-year period, which has been adopted by government over a series of engagements, and some of them played themselves out in the public domain, accepted and adopted the full introduction of equity equivalence in the ICT sector as one of the targets to pursue during this period. Taking that into consideration, right, and I want to assure colleagues that the process that kick-started in September last year, leading to the first interaction with ICASA, is of course whenever any new leader assumes a position of responsibility, you study the landscape, you identify where you think that there are areas that require either clarity, intervention, review, and measure the instrument with which to use. And that is why we engage on this process. And the stage of this process where it is now, it's not definitive. It's not definitive because it must also take into consideration what all the inputs that are going to be submitted are going to be. And I'm looking actually forward to engaging with the substance of those inputs. Honorable Stolle, I think you were speaking about two different issues when you spoke about the process that ICASA, undertook in terms of the inquiry that took place. And if time allows, I would ask the ICASA chair to deal specifically with that so that we are able to release the intertwining of those two issues, because that process unfolded in its own way, and they are able to then answer that. Honorable Ndlela speaks about the discovery that Starlink is operating in the country illegally. Any company that operates in the country through other backward channels, illegal ways, I think the laws of it must be a must that the laws of the country must be upheld. It must be. Regardless whether they are Malatsi satellites or Ndlela satellites or whoever, there must be. And I think the question that you're asking is they are operating under our nose. Personally, I didn't know about that discovery that we have made. And in all fairness, I think we'll engage with the regulator to be able to set the right course of action going forward. And then there was, there's a lot. Yeah. The other sentiment in here, which I don't want to spend a lot of time around, of course, there is a lot of audience exhibitioning that is taking place. And that seems to say that you've got a minister who belongs to the Democratic Alliance, who somewhere has a conspiracy to make special dispensation for any interested businesses to operate in our country. Nothing could be further from the truth. And someone asked, am I being bullied? No, I'm not being bullied. I don't take kindly to bullies. And I would not allow myself to be bullied. And then we'll move to the Honorable Makwela. The Honorable Makwela had 4 questions. Why should we keep you? Unfortunately, being kept in here is beyond your control. And I'm not being rude, because ministers serve at the pleasure of the president through the formation of the government of national unity. And when are you reversing the Gazette? I think it's important to give the stage of the public comments the rightful place that it enjoys in the process, and let be guided by what these public submissions are saying to that. Who pressured you? Nobody pressured me, as I said. And I underscore that point because the events that predated this week are important to take into consideration if we're going to deal fairly and substantively with the issue at play. What I do pick up, though, which is a genuine concern of the members of the committee and some of the sentiment of the public, it is saying, why that week, right? And I make the point that depending on what conclusion you want to get to, you'll get any argument that suits that. I made the point earlier that when we communicated on the policy directive, the timeline we were aiming and working with was to finalize the policy direction process by mid-June. We are now in May, and we've gazetted that in the 3rd week of May to allow that process to go through. And I appreciate the fact that some members may view that development and conclude whatever they want to conclude. But it is the following of a due process that has been taking place for some time. Honorable Makhubela, I believe that I'm capable of doing this job. I'm not contemplating any attempt whatsoever to resign. And just for clarity, I don't take the comments made by Honorable Shongwe to be an ad hominem attack whatsoever. And I think I'm advantaged by the fact that we have had prior engagements. In fact, this is the least heated engagement we've had with the portfolio, given how other meetings have gone by. I think there is a passion and there is a deep-rooted concern about two things, which also link to what the chairperson said. Regulation parity, same rules for the same players, right? And when we say that if you consider that you would then have the option of the path of the equity equivalence or sticking to pursuing the 30% ownership, that choice lies upon whoever wants to enter the market. It is a choice that is embedded. It is embedded in the legislation. And it was enacted, colleagues, by the founder of one party in this house that Honorable Shong and Honorable Makhubela represents. So we are not trying to act outside the prescripts of what the law of empowerment says. And there's also this attempt to say, you know, does this have government buy-in? BBBEE is a policy of government. It is there. And we are trying to give life to the full spirit of that, so that we don't face an instance where, due to different interpretations, due to different lobbying on considerations, we think that there is a gap, and that gap can be sustained. Because one of the key elements of having, and the committee has been passionate about this, around the issue of policy certainty, is asking all the duality that exists in the interpretation of the policy. I think it was either Honorable Mhaha, but also two other colleagues prior to you mentioned in terms of the question that infers that is one undermining ICASA. No, none at all. And that's why the process says, and the regulator can confirm in this, and Chair, it also touches your point in terms of the phrasing and the directive. And the use of the direct is, you know, you could say the language could be better, but it is founded upon which section makes provision for policy directive to be issued. In the end, when the submissions from the public are being considered, they will influence the final formulation of that policy. And then it will state right? And I try not to get into the permutations, because the risk of getting into the permutations may give the incorrect impression that there is a foregone conclusion to an ongoing process. And there isn't a foregone conclusion to an ongoing process, because it reconciles with the point that some members consistently say that why not do, and I think it was Honorable Tambo, and apologies if I'm incorrectly associating you with an idea that wasn't yours, why not amend the ECA? Because it will then deal with these issues of mandate overstep and all of that. And I'm saying, colleagues, I am not stuck to what the draft policy is articulating in terms of what it seeks to achieve, because I do not know what the submissions will be, because there are going to be submissions that may encapsulate some of the views that have been expressed here, some of which have been expressed in the media, and those will then be additional. But what I do know, which we've got a constitutional responsibility to do, is that we must consider those comments, and those comments must be considered properly in informing the final policy direction. And then ultimately, which is why I think there is a fear that in the final formulation of the policy somehow, you would have indirectly placed undue pressure on the regulator to take a particular position on this matter. It is actually the elephant in the room that is not being asked. And I'm doing that deliberately to say that is not the case, because the regulator has a responsibility to ensure that it does its job regardless of the size of the noise or what is being codified as an expression. I make the point, which I think Honorable Subrathi or Honorable Matafa was warning against, to say that, I can't say that the authority can't stop the minister. The point I was making and clarifying in that is that in terms of the process, the authority can express its view, and you have to interrogate that view and be satisfied that does it sufficiently ask the questions one is seeking to resolve with the draft policy or not. And I'm properly empowered to make a determination as to it does that adequately or not. And when I believe that isn't the case, we go to the stage of gazetting, and then we go to the stage of considering the public comment. I've got trust in the public participation process to be able, to express the sentiment of both parliamentarians, both parties, both players in the sector, and the public. We are a representative democracy here, and that input has to be taken into consideration. And I would say to colleagues, whether you believe that the step of the policy direction would be one that you would have preferred or you would have taken, there is a public process that is going to unfold to that. Let that process also take its course, and let us measure what the input says in there. Somebody spoke about the risk of litigation. In the interest of openness, and I'm never one to duck and dive questions, it is possible, because any other party that has a divergent view on a policy initiative can feel that the true test of that would be a litigation. But I also believe that the ultimate test of leadership is also being able to lead in a manner that considered all of the options that are at place, and making decisions having considered all of that. And I believe that this avenue of the policy directive is legally sound in its substance and its process. And that I further believe that the final submission of the comments will be considered, as they should, in determining the final policy, direction, and most importantly, the shape and the manner in which it looks. Chair, the last point, and I hope this does not degenerate the conversation, but I think it's important because there are some dots being connected. I can't dissociate myself from the fact that the leader of my party was part of the delegation to the US. And I'm a proud member of my party. I'm not apologetic about that. And I belong to a party that is part of this administration. And this administration, through the president and the other members that were in that delegation, have consistently said there was no discussion whatsoever about Starlink. There wasn't. Some of you have shared this sentiment in there. So as to why you would want to implicate me into conversations I wasn't part of in order to shape a narrative of bullying, I don't know what that seeks to achieve, because each and every opportunity, that idea has been squashed by facts. And that's what must lead our conversations, Chair. And that's what I've got a very long appetite for in terms of the engagement. I know that the portfolio committee would, as it should, at any given time where they feel that the minister needs to take us into confidence. Whether we ultimately agree or not is not important. What is important is that the committee wants to have a sense that they've been taken into confidence about what is happening in their space, and that it's fulfilling its responsibility of oversight, and that we account. Whether it is at short notice or what, we must do that. Because it is important that when conversations of this nature, and I appreciate the fact that this is not just, the nature of this conversation is a matter of national importance. And that is why we also have a full complement of attendance from the portfolio committee, right? Because it speaks to that importance of the issue. And those conversations must be had. And as uncomfortable as it may seem to others, we'll always come here and account fully and take responsibility for the actions and the initiatives that we initiated, because we believe they are sound. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Minister. There's a lot of stuff, Honourable Members. You don't have to raise it. I've noted everything everybody has said. There's a lot of stuff that's not answered. But Minister, I'm going to press you on one thing, because you underscored it and you said it was important. I think it was Honourable Mkhaha who asked you, did you consult ICASA, and if so, what did ICASA say? Because as you've said, that is the big issue, because we are also worried about the influence that you are seeking to exert on ICASA. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. When we engaged with ICASA, there are written submission to us, which I'm sure at the dictates of the process it will be shared. Their conclusion was they prefer the option of an amendment of the ECA, and did not rule out that the minister can pursue the angle of the policy directive. They expressed what they would prefer. Thank you.
Okay. Honourable Members, I think we must wrap this issue up. As always, you are free to write to the Minister. Minister, please respond to our letters. You are free to write to the Minister if there's issues that you want to take up, if this matter must come back again. Minister, I want to underscore one thing to you. This portfolio committee has been kicking, screaming, saying to you, the legislation is outdated, the policy environment is outdated, the regulations are outdated. You've come to us with a 5-year plan that in the first year does not even look at amending legislation. You're going to be planning to do this. We would not have this problem. What you were supposed to do was to update and bring the ECA, amend it in Parliament. You were supposed to do a policy and regulatory environment overhaul. And I'm saying that now we are chasing our tails, running around. And we were promised that by the end of May, today is the 28th, I asked in the House, when are we getting the audio and audiovisual policy? The DG sat there straight face, she said end of May. You are going to circumvent, cut corners now because you don't have a policy, and then we're going to have to sit here again. You know, and I think that those are really part of the challenges that you're facing. I'm not going to rule from the chair that members are saying withdraw, others are saying give it the 30 days, others are saying 90 days. Yeah, you didn't put a date, Honorable Makubela, on resignation. I'm not going to rule on those things. I think all of us were expressing our opinions. I do think that where there are areas where there are legal disagreements, which I think are at the core of this, with the principle in particular, the fact that you cannot use regulations to amend a law or to align to any law. And unfortunately, we didn't get a substantive answer to that question. But be that as it may, we do thank you And I'm sure I'm not going to give ICASA an opportunity to speak. They, like other members of the public, may make their comments. I would just be very keen to find out what would happen if ICASA continues to express their view that they do not agree with you and have a preference of the other route. Members, I'm closing this matter. And I want to apologize to FPB, and then I want to give 2 minutes to the SABC to answer whether they have paid Centec, and to Centec 2 minutes to confirm that the SABC has paid them. Because I think the second issue on the agenda was that. On the FPB, we are going to schedule a virtual meeting so that you don't have to travel again. And we truly, truly apologize for that. Chairperson of SABC, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and honorable members, Minister, and colleagues on the platform. So I would assume, Chair, that the question is relating to the reclassified funds. Or
sorry, there's an outstanding debt of 1 billion rand. Then you got 150 million in environment that was meant to go towards the debt, as we understand it. So if we could just get an update on that as quickly as you can. Thank you.
Okay. So in short, Chair, we did not have that understanding. Our understanding was that reclassification was to assist us to continue to pay Centec, and I can confirm that we have spent that money towards the bill of Centec. Thanks.
CO, do you want to add in terms of where the bill, the status of the bill is currently, the debt to SABC, I mean?
Good afternoon to you, Chair, the Minister, all the honourable members present and my colleagues. Just to augment what the Chair was saying, SABC in the financial year under review increased its payments to Centec from 20 million rand excluding VAT for the financial year ended 24 to actually double to 40 million rand. And in March, the basis of that was that we had various engagements with the department and with the then Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, where there was an agreement that the department, if you recall, Chair, it was just before the national elections, and it was important for us to ensure that the services were not disrupted in any form. The money was increased from 20 to 40 million rand with a proviso, and the letter states that the department would assist the SABC with the increased payment. And that's based on the new master tariff agreement that came into effect in March of that year. However, it was very clear to all of us that in order for us to even maintain that payment as the second part, so the first part is that the department would assist with the payment, and the second part was that the department would assist in approaching National Treasury to get the environment. The department assisted only in March of 2024 with the shortfall. As of April, SABC has been paying the increase, the double payment by itself. The environment came only towards, I think it was October of last year. The full amount of that environment was paid to Centec for November, December, January, in fact. So it's critical when we have this to have the context that SABC for the year ending 25 increased their payments to Centec above 300 million in comparison to the previous year. Throughout this period, we made it very clear that the increase was really straining us financially, because literally what we do, we pay Centec first before we pay any of our service providers, meaning that producers, etc., actually come after the Centec payment. We've maintained that payment despite a very, very challenging trading period. So the belief that SABC did not pay Centec is actually not, is void, unless perhaps there was a misunderstanding whereby Centec was under the impression that the increase of the the environment would actually mean that SABC would fully pay the invoice. But that was not the case, Chair. And it's also important that we have been given our quarterly performance to the department. So the department is very much aware of our cash flow position and the payments we've been making for the past year. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, CEO. Resist the temptation to be like the members. CEO, congratulations, CEO. Congratulations on your appointment, Mr. Leshope. Over to you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I think, just maybe to be clear, there is a departure of understanding in terms of what the environment was intended for. As per our discussion and records with the SABC in April last year, Chairperson. So we do have a transmission agreement with the SABC where the current agreement is being short paid by approximately 15 million rand. When we agreed with the SABC in April last year, it was on the condition that there will be a top-up on the 51 million that the SABC is currently paying when the environment is received, Chairperson. And this is not the case. The SABC has not topped up. We had a meeting with the SABC Executive, Centec Executive Committee and the SABC Executive Committee on the 7th. Precisely to raise the concerns and request the SABC to actually pay the environment in accordance with the initial intention, Chairperson. Because this matter is affecting and risking sustainability of Centec in a negative manner that eventually, if not treated by the SABC, will affect the SABC, Chairperson. It is still our plea that the SABC revert back to the initial terms and conditions of the agreement at that time. So the SABC, yes, has stepped up its payment from previously about 20 million rand, which we acknowledge as the organization. You would have heard me here in Parliament actually appreciating that increase in payment. However, where we are, the SABC is still short paying Centec by 15 million rand, Chairperson. It is a risk, it is a sustainability risk, and it is a matter that we've brought to the attention of the SABC. We do have feedback in writing from the SABC Chairperson that they are sitting in a board meeting on the 29th. We are expecting that the SABC will write to us after that board meeting on the basis of the concerns and the requests and the issues that we raised directly with the SABC in our meeting of the 7th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, can I suggest then how we're going to handle this issue? We will schedule the Minister in his next appearance to provide us with an update, because the last time we spoke about this, you were going to mediate. So we've never received a mediation. We've run out of time. And you are going to, okay, you have 1 minute, but we still need a report on the mediation. Minister?
Thanks very much, Chair. I thought because you've opened the door, then we must take it. There's been an element of frustration on the part of the department with the mediation efforts because it's taken long to get both parties to agree first in the beginning to the terms of reference for that mediation. Ultimately, we got over that stage, and the difficulty then became in the procurement of the services that we need to lead that mediation, because they have to have an understanding of both the challenges that Centec faces and the reality of the SABC. And I make this point as what has contributed to the delay in kicking off the mediation process. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. You said to Honorable Makubele she has no say in you being a minister, in the same way that you have no say in the fact that you must resolve the problem. So we would really wish to get a report, and I think that will then afford members an opportunity to engage with the issue. Honorable Bodlani said time management. We must manage our meetings better. Please indulge me, Honorable Vilakazi.
Thank you, Chair. It's really to echo the point that you are making now. A frustration for me in reading the presentation that was presented to us by the department is I see that the department basically throws SAPC under the bus and says they are not serving
Going to
the debt.
stop you, Honorable Vilakazi.
Hang on.
You are discussing.
No. I want to say, Uruti, for me, the frustration, as we receive the report from the minister, let the department take responsibility for the fact that these are its entities, and both of them need each other to survive. So the department can't adopt a stance, we favor this one and the other child is truant. It must, as you just said to the minister, it's his responsibility and the department's responsibility not to just say, hey, I don't know, leave it. The department must come to us with a plan for how it intends to see both these entities have a going concern status that is improved to what currently exists.
Thank you, Honorable Vilakazi. Honorable members, I'm going to bring the meeting to a close, maybe with one announcement. The subcommittee on the vacancies at MDDA is going to sit. Mr. Ngoma will just communicate in a short meeting where we are going to discuss and adopt the program for the filling of the vacancies. So I'm sure it's going to be a virtual meeting during the course of the week or still. If there's no other business, let me once again thank the Minister, the officials from the department, all stakeholders present. Thank you, honorable members, for your participation in this discussion. I want to declare the meeting officially closed. Thank you.
A round of applause for the Minister.